You ever hear something and it just clicks? Like a line that hits so hard, it feels like it unlocked a cheat code you didn't even know existed. Yeah, that's what this is, because what you're about to hear tonight, it isn't just some motivational fluff or another self-help lecture filled with recycled advice. Nah, this is the actual blueprint that built empires, literal empires. Napoleon Hill spent 25 years interviewing the richest, most powerful people of his time. People like Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and he didn't just ask them what they did. He reverse-engineered how they thought. The patterns, the beliefs, the invisible stuff no one ever teaches you in school, and he turned it all into a philosophy. Not just to make money, but to completely reprogram your mind for success. A philosophy that, if you just let it sit in your subconscious while you sleep, can quietly start shifting how you think, act, and move through the world. And the crazy part, it still holds up like scary accurate even in 2025. But before that, I would love to invite you into our cozy corner of the internet. Drop a quick comment and let us know where are you watching this from, and what time is it for you. It's pretty cool how we're all connected, searching for that perfect night's sleep. If these Napoleon Hill philosophies light up something in you, please subscribe our channel Restwise. Now, get comfy and let these philosophies guide you into a peaceful sleep. Let's start with a name you may have heard before, but maybe never really understood. Napoleon Hill. Now sure, the name sounds grand, like someone who might have been a general in some European war, right? But Hill wasn't a soldier, not in the traditional sense. He was a soldier of the mind, a quiet architect behind one of the most powerful success philosophies of the last 100 years. Born in 1883 in a small cabin in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia, Hill didn't exactly come from wealth. In fact, it was the opposite. He grew up dirt poor. His mother died when he was just 9 years old. His father remarried, and life carried on, not with ease, but with struggle. And maybe that's what shaped him. That early experience of lack, of watching life happen from the sidelines. He wasn't born into success. He had to go out and study it. And that's exactly what he did. See, Hill started writing as a young man. At just 13 years old, he began working as a journalist for small-town newspapers. Not glamorous stuff. We're talking coal country reporting. But it was through this work that he learned how to observe people, to really listen, to ask better questions. And that's a skill that would serve him more than any formal education ever could. Fast forward to his mid-20s. This is where things get interesting. It's 1908. Hill's writing career is gaining a little traction, and he lands what seems like a one-time assignment interview. Andrew Carnegie, the steel tycoon and one of the wealthiest men in history at the time. Now, most reporters would have shown up, asked a few questions, scribbled some notes, and left. But Hill, he walked into that meeting with curiosity and walked out with a mission. Because Carnegie, and this is real, looked at this young man, listened to how he thought, and offered him a challenge that would change his life. He said, "I will introduce you to the most powerful men of this era, if you're willing to dedicate the next 20 years of your life to studying them. Find out what makes them successful. Break it down and share it with the world. No funding, no contract, just a handshake and a purpose." And Hill said yes. Let that sink in for a second. Imagine being in your 20s and deciding to spend the next 2 decades of your life chasing nothing but ideas. No guarantee, no safety net. Just a fire inside you telling you this matters. So Hill went on a journey. He studied the minds of Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, Charles M. Schwab, Theodore Roosevelt, and dozens of others. He wasn't just asking, "How did you make your money?" He was asking, "How do you think? What do you believe? What habits guide your decisions? What fears do you fight against?" He was doing what no one else was doing back then. And honestly, what very few people do well even now, trying to decode success at the level of mindset. And this mission wasn't for fame. It wasn't for money. It was to build what he would later call the philosophy of achievement, a mental framework that anyone, regardless of background, education, or connections, could apply to create a better life. In 1937, after nearly 25 years of research, failures, rewrites, and revisions, Hill finally published the work that would go on to define him: Think and Grow Rich. And here's what's wild: this book wasn't just about money. The title might fool you, but it's really a book about thought, about mindset, about belief and imagination and persistence and planning. It's about how your inner world creates your outer one. Now, remember, this was during the Great Depression. People were losing everything. But here comes this book, filled with hope, grounded not in wishful thinking, but in real conversations with real achievers. Hill wasn't giving people fantasy. He was giving them a manual. And it worked. Think and Grow Rich became one of the best-selling books of all time, over 100 million copies worldwide. But Hill, he stayed humble. He kept teaching, kept speaking, kept refining the ideas. And even though he passed away in 1970, his legacy didn't fade. In fact, it only grew stronger, especially as the modern self-help world exploded. People like Tony Robbins, Bob Proctor, Jim Rohn, and almost every motivational speaker you know today, they all trace some of their roots back to Napoleon Hill. And you want to hear the real kicker? Science is now catching up to what Hill was saying all along. Neuroscience, psychology, behavioral studies, all proving that beliefs, repetition, visualization, and emotional anchoring truly do rewire the brain. Hill didn't have access to brain scans or academic labs, but somehow he knew. And that's why we're here tonight, because understanding who Napoleon Hill was isn't just about learning his story. It's about realizing that he was once just like you, a thinker, a dreamer, a person who wanted more from life and decided to study the blueprint. So tonight, as your body begins to relax and your mind softens into stillness, you're going to hear the same philosophy that shaped generations. But this time, it'll enter through a new doorway, your subconscious. Hill believed that thoughts are things, that your desires have power, that your beliefs become real. And now that you know who he was, we're ready to explore what he taught. Let's go deeper. His meeting with Andrew Carnegie. So now you know who Napoleon Hill was, a young man with big questions and even bigger curiosity. But the story truly takes off with one encounter, a single meeting that turned an ordinary journalist into the architect of a success philosophy that would outlive him by 100 years. Let's talk about his meeting with Andrew Carnegie. The year was 1908. Hill was in his mid-20s, fresh-faced and hungry to make a name for himself. At the time, he was working on a series of magazine articles about successful men in business. He was given an opportunity to interview one of the titans of the age, the steel magnate, philanthropist, and at that point, one of the wealthiest people on earth, Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie wasn't just rich, he was legendary. He had built an empire from nothing. He came to America as a poor Scottish immigrant and rose to control the steel industry, the backbone of American infrastructure at the time. Meeting him was a big deal, a once-in-a-lifetime kind of assignment. But no one knew that this interview would last 3 days. Yeah, not minutes, not hours, days. Now, imagine that for a second. You walk into what you think is going to be a quick Q&A with a business mogul, and suddenly, you're being invited into a deep, sprawling conversation about success, mindset, human potential, and purpose. That's exactly what happened. Hill sat across from Carnegie, notebook in hand, and began asking questions. But Carnegie flipped the script. He didn't just answer questions. He asked some of his own, and eventually he revealed what was really on his mind. Carnegie believed that the true secrets of success, the mental patterns, the inner beliefs, the consistent habits, were universal, but undocumented. He said the world needed a philosophy of personal achievement, something that anyone could study and apply, not just those born into wealth or privilege. And then, with almost prophetic foresight, he said, "The time is ripe for it now. The world is waiting for a practical philosophy of success, one that can be taught in schools and homes alike." Carnegie explained that most people focus on the external factors of success, money, tools, connections, but they ignore the inner mechanics, belief, clarity, purpose, willpower, imagination. He believed those were the true engines behind achievement. So he proposed a bold idea. He would connect Hill with the most powerful and accomplished minds of the time, the Fords, the Edisons, the Rockefellers, but only if Hill agreed to devote 20 years of his life to studying them. No salary, no promises of fame, just the mission: discover the formula behind success and give it to the world. Here's the wild part. Carnegie later revealed that he had actually timed how long Hill would take to respond to the offer. He wanted to see if this young man had decisiveness, one of the traits Carnegie believed was essential for greatness. Hill accepted in under 30 seconds, no hesitation. And that was it. That moment became the ignition point for everything that followed. You see, what makes this story so powerful isn't just the fact that Carnegie made the offer. It's that Hill said yes, without knowing what the next 2 decades would look like. No guarantee of a paycheck, no roadmap, just a handshake and a vision. That one decision shaped Hill's destiny, and in a way it shaped ours too. Because without it, Think and Grow Rich might never have existed. Now, let's pause here and reflect on why this meeting matters so much. Carnegie was essentially saying, success isn't magic. It's not luck. It's not about being born with the right name or knowing the right people. It's a system, a pattern of thoughts and actions that can be studied, practiced, and reproduced. And Hill, he took that to heart. He treated it like a sacred responsibility. What followed was 25 years of research, interviews, observation, and synthesis. Hill wasn't just collecting quotes. He was mapping out a psychological operating system for achievement. He was the first to ask, what do all successful people have in common at the mental and emotional level? Not just in strategy, but in mindset, in energy, in the way they believe. That was the real treasure buried in this meeting. A reminder that the answers to life's biggest challenges often come from within. That changing your thoughts can, eventually, change your life. And for Hill, that belief started with Carnegie. A mentor he didn't ask for, a challenge he didn't expect, a moment that shaped his mission. So why does this matter to you, listening right now? Because you might not ever meet a Carnegie. You might not have a moment where someone slides a golden opportunity across the table. But what you do have is the ability to decide. Just like Hill did, you can choose to start thinking differently. You can decide to study what works, to reshape your beliefs, to build your inner world on purpose, not by accident. And maybe, just maybe, that's all it takes. Tonight, as you let your thoughts settle and your body rest, let that idea sink in. What if the next chapter of your life is just one decision away, the same way it was for Hill all those years ago? And now that we've met the man and the moment that sparked it all, it's time to look at what came next. The beginning of a book, a philosophy, a movement. Let's talk about the birth of Think and Grow Rich. The birth of Think and Grow Rich. So, Napoleon Hill had just made one of the biggest decisions of his life. He accepted Andrew Carnegie's challenge to dedicate 20 years to studying the habits, mindsets, and behaviors of the most successful people in the world. And he meant it. For the next 2 decades, Hill interviewed and analyzed hundreds of people, not just the big names like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and John D. Rockefeller, but also lesser-known business minds, inventors, and leaders who were achieving extraordinary results in their fields. He was trying to answer one simple but powerful question: what makes successful people successful? Not in terms of luck or talent, but in terms of thinking, decision-making, belief, drive, vision, behavior. And after thousands of pages of notes, interviews, trial and error, Hill noticed something. They all followed similar mental patterns, not exactly the same actions, but the same mindset framework. Certain principles kept showing up again and again, and that's when it hit him: success wasn't random. It was intentional. It was learnable. He started to organize these patterns into what he would later call the 13 Principles of Success. That became the foundation for his most iconic work, Think and Grow Rich. Now, it's worth pausing here and talking about the timing. The book was published in 1937, right in the middle of the Great Depression. People were broke, scared, and confused about the future. And here comes this book with a bold, almost audacious promise in the title: Think and Grow Rich. At first glance, it might sound like it's just about money. But that's not what Hill meant. His definition of rich was much broader. It was about abundance, not just in your bank account, but in your mindset, relationships, health, and ability to create whatever kind of life you wanted. To Hill, riches were a byproduct. The real currency was thought. Hence, Think and Grow Rich. This book wasn't just inspirational fluff or motivational hype. It was a system. Hill laid out 13 concrete, repeatable steps that anyone could follow to build success from the inside out. Here's a quick preview of what those steps looked like. Desire, the starting point of all achievement. Not vague wishing, a burning, specific want. Faith, developing unshakable belief in yourself and your vision. Autosuggestion, repeating key ideas to yourself until they influence your subconscious mind. Specialized knowledge, going beyond general education to learn what directly helps your goal. Imagination, using your creative mind to turn ideas into reality. Organized planning, turning desire into action through clear strategy. Decision, the ability to commit and act quickly, not hesitating in fear. Persistence, keeping momentum even when things get hard. Mastermind, surrounding yourself with aligned, growth-focused people. Sex, transmutation, redirecting creative and physical energy into productivity. Subconscious mind, training the deeper mind to work for your success. The brain, treating your brain as a broadcasting station for ideas, thoughts, and energy. The sixth sense, that gut feeling or inner guidance that only shows up after the others are mastered. Each of these was drawn from the real lives of high achievers. Hill didn't invent them, he distilled them. And his genius was in the way he connected them all into a usable blueprint. Now, think about this: Hill didn't write Think and Grow Rich from the sidelines. He lived these ideas. He tested them. He failed, got back up, and kept refining the method. He wasn't preaching. He was translating success into a language that the average person could understand and apply. The book's message was clear: success isn't about luck. It's not about who you know. It's not even about raw intelligence. It's about how you think, what you believe, and what you do with those beliefs. And the public responded. Think and Grow Rich became an instant phenomenon. It sold over 1 million copies during its first few years, without any flashy marketing. Just word of mouth, people reading it, applying it, and telling others what happened when they did. What's even crazier, over 100 million copies have been sold since. It's been translated into dozens of languages, taught in universities, quoted by presidents, CEOs, and top performers across every industry you can name. But more than anything, it's become a personal Bible for people who want to take control of their lives, not by chasing shortcuts, but by upgrading their mindset. That was Hill's real mission. He wasn't trying to create a motivational book. He was building a mental operating system, something that could guide anyone, anywhere, regardless of background or circumstance, toward the version of success they defined for themselves. And that's what gave birth to Think and Grow Rich. It wasn't just the product of research, it was a movement, a message that continues to echo across generations. Because the truth is, the tools inside that book aren't outdated. They're not old school. They're timeless. Human thought hasn't evolved past desire, belief, and action, and it probably never will. Hill simply gave us the blueprint, and it all began with this book. Now, let's dig deeper into the core mission behind that book. The heartbeat of all of Hill's work, the philosophy of achievement. Hill's mission, the philosophy of achievement. So, let's take a step back for a second. Napoleon Hill wasn't just trying to write a book. He wasn't trying to sell motivational posters or run seminars. His real mission, the thing that drove him for over 20 years, was something way deeper. He called it the philosophy of achievement. And yeah, that might sound a little fancy or academic at first, but Hill didn't mean it that way at all. What he really meant was this: I want to figure out how ordinary people can live extraordinary lives, and then show them the exact process for making it happen. That's it. That was the mission. To decode success, to break it down into steps, to turn it into something that could be passed on, like a manual. He believed success wasn't some rare gift or something you had to be born into. It was a skill set, a mindset, a philosophy. Let's look at where this came from. When Hill first started interviewing people under Carnegie's guidance, he quickly realized that the ultra-successful, whether they were inventors, business moguls, or leaders, they weren't just lucky or unusually smart. They thought differently. They had beliefs, habits, and mental strategies that were consistent, repeatable, and they almost always followed a pattern. Now, most people just saw the surface, the money, the inventions, the success stories. But Hill went deeper. He asked, what are these people doing inside their minds? And that's when it clicked. He wasn't just collecting stories. He was uncovering a unified system for personal achievement. And more importantly, he saw that it could be taught. It could be shared. That's where the term, philosophy of achievement, came from. And here's the key thing Hill emphasized over and over again. Success is not a matter of chance. It's a matter of choice. And choice starts with thought. He believed that your mind is like fertile soil. Whatever you plant, whether it's a thought of abundance or a thought of failure, that seed will grow. So the question isn't if your thoughts shape your life. It's which thoughts are you planting? And that's the philosophy in a nutshell. You become what you think about, and you can control what you think about. That's a radical idea, especially for the time he was writing in. Back then, most people were conditioned to believe success came from hard labor, inheritance, or connections. Hill was flipping that whole model. He was saying, you don't need to wait for the right time. You don't need to be born into wealth. You don't need to rely on luck or the government or your boss or your environment. You just need to train your mind to think the way successful people think, and the rest starts to follow. And just to be clear, Hill wasn't ignoring hard work. He wasn't saying, just visualize and everything comes to you. His whole philosophy is built on intentional thinking plus focused action. One without the other doesn't work. Let's break it down a bit more. The philosophy of achievement has three main components. 1. Definite chief aim. Hill believed that drifting, just floating through life, was one of the biggest causes of failure. So, the first part of the philosophy is getting crystal clear on what you actually want. Not a vague wish, a definite goal, something that burns in your mind day and night. Example, I want to earn 100,000 in the next 12 months by building a digital business. that helps small brands grow. Now you're not just hoping, you're targeting. 2. Control over thoughts and emotions. Hill's philosophy teaches that if you can't control what you focus on, your thoughts, beliefs, emotions, then someone else will. Fear, doubt, negativity, these all sneak in unless you actively shape your mental environment. That's where tools like autosuggestion, affirmations, and emotional visualization come in. Not as woo-woo hacks, but as ways to train your mind the same way you'd train a muscle. 3. Action with faith and persistence. This is where most people trip. They either dream without doing, or they do without believing. Hill says both are required. You need to act, consistently, intelligently, and persistently, but you also need to believe. That's what turns effort into momentum. When your belief aligns with your action, progress starts compounding. Now, here's something not many people realize. Hill didn't just want to help you become rich. He wanted to help you become free, mentally, emotionally, financially. His real goal was to give people control over their lives. Not through force, but through understanding, through discipline, through mental clarity. In his own words, the philosophy of achievement was designed to help you find your purpose, teach you how to think with intention, give you a roadmap for turning dreams into results, and make you independent, not just financially, but intellectually and emotionally. It's not a motivational talk, it's a mental operating system. And once you install it, everything changes. How you make decisions, how you deal with setbacks, how you bounce back, how you lead. That's why Think and Grow Rich wasn't just a book to him. It was the delivery vehicle for this entire philosophy. It's the reason this work has lasted almost 100 years and is still going strong. Hill wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing a formula that anyone could use, regardless of where they were starting from, to build the life they wanted. That's the philosophy of achievement. And next, we're going to explore the world that shaped Hill's thinking, the America of the early 20th century, and why that era was so crucial in forming these ideas. Let's get into it. The influence of early 20th century America. All right, so picture this. It's the early 1900s. America's changing, fast. The horse and buggy getting replaced by cars, candles and gas lamps, giving way to electric lights. Factories are booming. Cities are expanding. The Industrial Revolution is in full swing, and everything, from communication to transportation, is accelerating. It's an era of huge transformation, but also huge uncertainty. And that's the world Napoleon Hill stepped into. Now, here's why this is so important. Hill's ideas didn't just pop up in a vacuum. They were shaped by, and responded to, the world around him. So to really get his philosophy, we have to understand the time he was living in. Let's break it down. 1. A new kind of American dream was emerging. Before this era, success in America mostly meant owning land, farming, or inheriting wealth. But the rise of industry flipped the script. Suddenly, self-made millionaires were being born from innovation, not inheritance. Carnegie came from nothing. Edison barely had formal education. Ford revolutionized production with the assembly line. These guys became legends. And Hill was fascinated by how they did it. In many ways, this was the first time the average person actually believed that success was possible through effort and ambition, not just luck or birthright. And Hill, he saw an opportunity to turn that belief into a system. 2. There was no self-help industry yet. Today, we're swimming in books, podcasts, courses, and life coaches. Back then, nothing like that existed. The idea that you could control your mindset to shape your destiny was still radical. Most people thought your life was defined by your family, your class, your race, your circumstances. Hill was one of the first people to challenge that publicly. He said, "No one is bound by circumstance. The mind is the only real frontier." That hit hard in a time when so many people were struggling just to survive. working long factory hours, barely scraping by. Hill was handing them a tool. If you can master your thoughts, you can change your life. 3. Post-depression. People were desperate for answers. Here's the other thing. Hill released Think and Grow Rich in 1937, right after the Great Depression. Millions had lost everything: jobs, homes, savings. Trust in the economy and institutions was shattered. There was fear in the air, and people were asking, how do I rebuild? What can I control in a world that feels totally out of control? That's where Hill's message landed like a lightning bolt. He wasn't offering some top-down economic fix. He was saying you have power. In here, Tap's head, you can take control of your beliefs, habits, and goals, and use them to create a future, even when everything around you is falling apart. That message wasn't just helpful. It was revolutionary. For spirituality was big. But so was science. Here's something interesting most people miss. Early 20th century America had this fascinating mix of faith and science. People still believed in God, prayer, divine intervention. But science and psychology were starting to gain serious traction. Freud, Pavlov, and later Jung. They were changing the way people thought about the mind. Hill stood right in the middle of those worlds. He spoke in spiritual terms: infinite intelligence, sixth sense, faith. But he also talked like a psychologist: autosuggestion, mental programming, subconscious reconditioning, cause and effect. He blended the spiritual and the scientific in a way that felt both grounded and inspiring. That's part of why his message reached so many different types of people: churchgoers, entrepreneurs, skeptics, dreamers. Everyone found something that clicked. 5. Hill was a man of the people. Let's not forget, Hill wasn't writing for the elite. He didn't care about impressing intellectuals or fitting into academia. He was writing for the ordinary person who wanted more out of life, but didn't know where to start. He used simple language, clear examples, step-by-step processes. And in a time when most success advice came in vague moral sermons, work hard and pray, Hill gave you something practical. Here's how the most successful people think. Here's how to copy it. Let's go. That practicality was rare, and it gave people real hope. Not just emotionally, but tactically. 6. The idea of the self-made man was cultural gold back then. America loved the idea of the self-made man. Someone who pulled himself up by the bootstraps. The underdog who made it. Hill's philosophy fit that narrative perfectly. He was telling people, you don't need perfect conditions. You don't need connections. You need a burning desire, a clear plan, and control of your thoughts. And in an age of economic chaos and class division, that message felt like a key to freedom. It still does. So why does this matter today? Because the roots of Hill's work are still alive in modern culture. We still chase the American dream. We still struggle with self-doubt, fear, and uncertainty. We still want clarity, purpose, direction. Hill's mission, shaped by his era, was to answer those needs. And by understanding the world he came from, we can better understand why his ideas still stick today. They're not just motivational fluff. They're tools that were born from a time of real struggle. Next up, we're going to dive into one of the biggest ideas at the core of Hill's system: the role of belief. Why it matters, how it works, and why nothing else in the system functions without it. Let's get into it. The role of belief in Hill's philosophy. So now we get to the real heartbeat of Hill's work: belief. Not the soft kind, not the "oh, I hope this works out" kind. Hill was talking about belief as a force of nature, something that literally shapes reality from the inside out. Let's get something straight right away. Hill didn't think success came from luck or talent or even hard work alone. He said success starts when you convince your subconscious mind that something is possible, before you have any proof that it is. That's belief. And without it, Nothing else works. So what did Hill actually mean by belief? He wasn't just talking about confidence or positive thinking. He was talking about a mental state where your thoughts, emotions, and actions align toward a single outcome, whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. That's not just a catchy phrase. That was Hill's core hypothesis. He believed that your subconscious mind, which runs about 95% of your behavior, doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So if you plant a belief deep enough, your subconscious goes to work aligning your habits, thoughts, and even your external environment to make that belief real. And here's what's wild. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Studies in neuroplasticity have shown that the brain physically rewires itself based on repeated thought and emotion. That's not philosophy. That's biology. So what Hill was preaching back in the 1930s, science is only now catching up with. Why is belief so critical in his system? Because every single one of Hill's principles, desire, autosuggestion, faith, decision, persistence, relies on belief to work. If you don't actually believe your goal is achievable, you won't fully commit. You'll hesitate when challenges come up. You'll sabotage yourself unconsciously. Hill saw this again and again in his interviews. The people who achieved massive things, they believed they would long before they saw any evidence of it. That's the part that separates dreamers from doers. Belief as hope. Let's pause here for a second, because Hill made a very sharp distinction. Hope is wishing for something. Belief is knowing it's already yours, even if you haven't touched it yet. This is what he called faith, not in a religious sense, but in a mental sense. Faith as belief in the unseen, belief in the outcome before it shows up. He even said, faith is the only known antidote for failure. So if belief is the switch that turns on success, faith is how you keep that switch on, even when reality looks the opposite. Okay, but how do you build belief? This is where it gets practical. Hill knew belief doesn't just show up. You don't wake up one day and suddenly believe you can build a company, write a book, or make $1 million. So he created methods for installing belief, mentally, emotionally, and neurologically. Here's how. 1. Autosuggestion. This is basically brain training. You repeat a specific goal or affirmation with emotion and clarity until it sinks past your conscious mind into your subconscious. I will earn $100 by December 31st by building a thriving business that solves real problems, not once, not twice, but daily, with conviction, until it starts to feel real too. Visualization. Hill was a huge believer in using imagination to create emotional reality, meaning you mentally rehearse your success with so much detail and emotion that your brain starts to accept it as fact. Studies today call this mental rehearsal, and athletes and high performers use it all the time. 3. Emotionally charged repetition. Repetition by itself isn't enough. Hill said the words must be charged with emotion, because it's emotion that burns belief into your nervous system. Think of it like this: a goal without emotion is a spark. A goal with emotion is a wildfire. Example from real life. Take Henry Ford, a guy Hill studied closely. Everyone laughed when Ford insisted he could build a car engine with 8 cylinders in one block. His engineers said it was impossible. He told them, do it anyway. Months passed. No results. Still, Ford believed. He held the vision. Eventually, they cracked the code. That's not just persistence. That's belief refusing to bend. Hill pointed to people like Ford and Edison as living proof that belief isn't soft, it's strategic. But what about fear, doubt, negativity? Great question. Hill acknowledged that negative belief is just as powerful, but in the wrong direction. If you believe you're not good enough, if you believe money is evil, if you believe success isn't for people like you, your subconscious will make sure that belief stays true. That's why Hill didn't say, avoid fear. He said, Override it. You override fear by building stronger beliefs, intentionally, daily, and with emotional repetition. Final thought on belief. Here's the bottom line: belief is the operating system underneath everything Napoleon Hill taught. It's the difference between setting a goal and actually achieving it, between starting something and seeing it through, between living reactively and living on purpose. And the best part, belief is trainable. You don't have to be born with it. You build it, brick by brick, word by word, thought by thought. Once you do that, once belief locks in, the rest of the system starts unfolding like dominoes. And that's exactly what we're going to look at next. Hill's idea that desire, real, focused, burning desire, is the starting point of all achievement. Let's move into it. Desire as the starting point of all achievement. All right. So we've talked about belief, how it sets the foundation for everything Napoleon Hill teaches. But now we're going to look at what Hill calls the starting point of all achievement. Desire. Now when Hill said desire, he didn't mean a wish or a preference. He wasn't talking about, yeah, I kinda want to be rich, or I hope this thing works out someday. That kind of thinking doesn't move anything. Hill was talking about something way more intense. He called it a burning desire, something definite, something that becomes an obsession, a feeling that grips you and doesn't let go. And he's very clear about this. Success doesn't begin until that kind of desire shows up. Here's how he puts it. Wishing will not bring riches, but desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an obsession. Then planning definite ways and means to acquire it, and backing those plans with persistence that does not recognize failure. That will bring riches. In short, desire is the fuel, belief is the ignition, action is the vehicle. You need all three, but without desire, the whole engine doesn't even turn on. And here's the wild part. Neuroscience today backs this up. Modern research in motivation and attention shows that when we really want something, like deeply, emotionally want it, our brain literally starts reorganizing around it. It filters what we notice, tunes in to relevant ideas, and fires up problem-solving regions to help us get there. Hill didn't have fMRI machines in the 1930s, but he understood this on a deep level. He said the mind becomes magnetized with the dominating thoughts we hold, and that desire is what gives those thoughts real power. So how do you actually use desire in a way that drives results? Hill didn't just leave us with a motivational quote and walk away. He gave a step-by-step system. Here's his 6-step method to turn desire into reality. First, fix in your mind the exact amount of money or goal you desire. Be specific, not a lot. Say 100,000 or 100,000 subscribers, or finish writing my book. Second, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for it. What's your value exchange? What will you trade? Time, skills, service, product. Third, establish a definite date by which you intend to achieve this. Put a clock on it. Time creates pressure. Pressure creates action. Fourth, create a clear plan and begin at once, whether you feel ready or not. Don't wait for the perfect time. The plan doesn't need to be perfect. Start where you are. Fifth, write a clear, concise statement of everything above. This becomes your core affirmation, your mission. Sixth, read it aloud twice a day, morning and night, with full emotion. Not like you're reading the news, like you mean it. Visualize it, feel it. Now, this isn't just some woo-woo mantra. Hill was incredibly practical. He believed this was how you program your subconscious. And today, science calls that self-directed neuroplasticity. In plain English, you're teaching your brain what to focus on. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Hill said you can build this kind of desire even if you don't naturally have it at first. How? By choosing a goal that excites you, and then feeding that goal daily with vision, repetition, and emotion. until it becomes a part of your identity. That's how desire turns into obsession. And that's exactly what Hill believed you needed. Not casual interest, obsession. He wrote, "Every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to burn his ships and cut all sources of retreat." He was referencing the idea of eliminating the backup plan. If you give yourself an out, your brain will take it. But if you remove the escape routes, desire intensifies. You're all in. Take an example from history, Henry Ford. When Ford said he wanted to create an engine with 8 cylinders in one block, his engineers told him it couldn't be done. Literally told him it was impossible. Ford didn't back down. He told them, build it anyway. They failed for months. Still he pushed, still he believed. Eventually they figured it out. That wasn't just vision. That was desire that refused to quit. Now, let's talk about something real. What if you don't know what you want? Or you think your desire isn't strong enough? Hill said start anyway. Start with some goal, any goal, and put your full attention on it. Because clarity doesn't usually show up before commitment. It comes after you start. After you make a choice. After you move in a direction. Desire sharpens through action, not thinking. And here's something else Hill emphasized. Desire needs to be emotionally charged. You can't just think it. You have to feel it. Because emotion is what sends the message deep into the subconscious. That's the part of the mind that controls 90% of your behavior, and it only responds to feeling, not logic. That's why reading your statement isn't enough. You have to put fire behind the words. The stronger the emotional desire, the stronger the focus. And the stronger the focus, the faster the momentum. One final point: Hill warned that weak desire produces weak results. Just like a small fire makes a small amount of heat. So if your results are small, don't blame the tools. Don't blame the circumstances. Check the intensity of your desire. Because if you want something badly enough, deeply enough, everything else starts bending to make it real. And that's why desire comes first. Everything else comes next. All right, now that you know how Hill viewed desire, it's time to go one step deeper. Let's talk about faith. What Hill called the visualization of belief, and why he said it's the mental glue that makes your desire unstoppable. Ready when you are. Faith, the visualization of belief. So we've covered desire, the starting point, the fire, the fuel. But now, we move to something just as crucial, if not more. Faith. And here's the first thing Hill makes clear: faith isn't about religion here. It's not about what church you go to or what spiritual path you follow. In Hill's world, faith is belief on fire. It's belief turned vivid, emotional, unshakable. It's when you don't just think something is possible. You see it, you feel it, you live like it's already yours. Hill said this was the glue between your thoughts and your reality. That when you mix belief with emotion and repeat it often enough, you literally start to rewire your brain, your identity, your habits, and eventually your outcomes. So what does he mean by visualization of belief? Let's break it down. First, what does faith look like in Hill's system? Hill defines faith as the emotional belief in yourself, in your goals, and in your ability to bring those goals into reality, even when there's no evidence yet. He says, quote, "Faith is the eternal elixir, which gives life, power, and action to the impulse of thought." Without faith, a goal is just an idea. With faith, it becomes a force. Here's what that means practically. You might have desire. You might even have a plan. But if you don't believe you can do it, like really believe it deep down, your subconscious will shut it down before you ever get close. You'll procrastinate. You'll self-sabotage. You'll forget to follow through. And worst of all, you'll rationalize why it wasn't possible. Faith prevents that. It's the antidote to doubt. So how do you build faith? Hill says, through repetition. through visualization, through autosuggestion. You tell yourself the same story over and over, not just with words, but with emotionally charged conviction, until your subconscious accepts it as fact. And this isn't just imagination. Your brain is literally listening. Modern neuroscience backs this. Visualization activates the same neural circuits as real-life action. Your brain can't always tell the difference between a vividly imagined future and something actually happening. That's why Olympic athletes mentally rehearse races before they ever step on the track. They're installing belief, and Hill said you can do the same with any goal, any dream, any version of yourself you're building. But here's the catch. You can't just say affirmations like a robot. You have to feel it. You have to bring it to life. You have to see yourself in the result. That's what he meant by the visualization of belief. You're not just repeating, "I'm going to succeed." You're closing your eyes and walking through the scene. You're seeing your name on the cover of the book. You're hearing the applause after your talk. You're logging in to check your bank balance and smiling over and over, morning and night, until your subconscious starts believing it's inevitable. Real life example. Hill's own struggle. Napoleon Hill didn't write this stuff from some ivory tower. There were years where he was flat broke, rejected, living in literal fear of the world, not believing in his work. And yet, he kept repeating the vision, kept reading his affirmations, kept building faith when everything in his outer world said no. Eventually, the tides turned, and the man who no one believed in ended up influencing tens of millions of people across a century. That wasn't luck. That was belief, visualized daily, turned into faith. Here's the catch Hill warned about. If you don't program your mind with positive faith, your mind will build negative faith on its own. Doubt, fear, worry, all those things are just belief in the wrong direction. You can't stop your brain from believing. It's always believing in something. So your job, according to Hill, is to make sure you're feeding it the right input. That's why he's so obsessed with autosuggestion. Because suggestion is happening all the time. Every time you talk to yourself, you're shaping your faith. Every time you say, "I can't do that," or "I'm not that kind of person," you're reinforcing a version of belief, even if it's disempowering. Faith isn't optional. It's just a question of what kind of faith you're living with. So what's the actual process? Hill's method is pretty simple but powerful. First, decide what you want, with clarity. No fuzziness. You've got to know where you're going. Second, write it down. Make it a statement. Add a timeline. Add what you're willing to give in return. Third, read that statement every morning and every night. But don't just read it. Feel it. Visualize the end result. Live in it. Fourth, speak to yourself like the result is already yours. Like it's unfolding. Like it's a done deal. Fifth, back it up with action. Faith without action is fantasy. Faith plus consistent effort is power. And finally, Hill says, faith is a state of mind which may be induced by autosuggestion. You don't have to wait around for it. You can build it. You can train it. And once you do, your goals become magnetic. Things start lining up. Your behavior shifts. You take bolder risks. You attract people who are aligned with your vision. All because you've installed belief at the core of who you are. That's what Hill meant by faith. Not just a feeling, not just hope, but a trained, emotional, repeatable process of believing into existence. So now that you've got the fire of desire and the internal belief system to back it up, it's time for the next key in Hill's method: auto-suggestion and mental reprogramming. How to speak to your subconscious in a way that actually gets results. Auto-suggestion and mental reprogramming. So now we've got desire, the spark, and we've got faith, the emotional engine. But here's the piece that ties them together: and actually embeds them deep into your subconscious where real change happens. Auto-suggestion. Now, this might sound technical, or like some hypnotist trick, but it's way simpler and way more powerful than that. Hill defines auto-suggestion as the medium for influencing the subconscious mind. In other words, it's how you talk to yourself, but not just casually, not just in passing. This is deliberate, focused, repeated. Think of it like programming a computer, except the computer is your brain, and the code is your inner dialogue, your imagination, your emotional energy. You've got inputs, your thoughts, words, and beliefs, and you've got outputs, your behaviors, habits, and results. Hill's point is, if you don't consciously input the right beliefs, your subconscious will just absorb whatever it hears the most, from other people, the media, your past, and worst of all, your fears. That's why auto-suggestion is a tool for mental reprogramming. It's not just affirmations for the sake of being positive. It's a strategy for overriding the default narrative you've been carrying. So how does it work? It starts with your desire statement, that clear, specific goal you created earlier. Hill says to read it twice a day, morning and night, out loud with full belief and emotion. Not like a chore, like you mean it. The words don't work by themselves. It's the emotion you attach to them that makes them powerful. Because here's how the subconscious works. It doesn't respond to logic. It responds to repetition, to imagery, to emotion. And when those three are combined, boom. That's when new beliefs start getting installed. Hill said, any idea, plan, or purpose may be placed in the mind through repetition of thought. So even if you don't fully believe the goal yet, you're planting the seed. And the more often you water it, the more natural it starts to feel. That's the entire point of auto-suggestion. Let's talk about why this works scientifically. Modern neuroscience has a name for this neuroplasticity. It's your brain's ability to physically rewire itself based on what you think, feel, and do repeatedly. When you use auto-suggestion, you're creating new neural pathways. You're telling your brain, this is important. This is who I am now. This is where we're going. Eventually, your actions start aligning with those thoughts, without you even trying so hard. Because now they feel normal, expected, inevitable. This is how habits form, how identity changes. You're not pretending to be confident or focused or successful. You become it because your brain has accepted the new script. But here's the catch. Hill warned about: your subconscious doesn't care if the suggestion is positive or negative. It will accept whatever you feed it, as long as it's repeated with emotion. So if you keep saying things like, I'm not smart enough for this, I always mess things up, I'm not the kind of person who succeeds, that's also auto-suggestion. You're programming failure on autopilot. Hill said you're always using auto-suggestion. The only question is, are you doing it consciously or unconsciously? So his solution: take control of the process. Here's how to do it. Hill's auto-suggestion method. First, create a clear written statement of your goal, what you want, when you want it, and what you'll give in return. Second, visualize it daily using vivid imagery and feeling. See it like a movie in your mind. Third, repeat it twice a day, morning and before sleep, in front of a mirror if possible. Fourth, speak in the present tense, as if it's already happening. Not, I will be successful. Say, I am building wealth through my creative work. I am attracting the right opportunities every day. Fifth, back your words with action. Because when your brain sees you actually following through, belief gets reinforced even faster. This isn't about manifesting in a magical sense. This is about building internal alignment so your thoughts, feelings, and actions all point in the same direction, like a laser instead of scattered light. That's when change gets real. World example, Let's say someone's trying to go from working a 9-to-5 job to running their own business. They've got the skills, they've got the dream. But deep down, they don't believe they're that kind of person. So every day, they wake up and tell themselves, I am a full-time creator. I solve problems with value. Every day, I'm building the life I designed. I trust myself to figure it out. At first it feels fake like lying, but after 30, 60, 90 days, that statement starts to feel true. They take more confident action. They speak up more. They build systems. They show up consistently. And then, the outer world starts to reflect that inner shift. That's not magic. That's auto-suggestion plus belief plus effort. Hill's exact formula. One final note, Hill says auto-suggestion is like planting seeds in a garden. Some days you won't feel it. Some days you'll doubt the words. But if you keep showing up, keep planting, keep watering with repetition and emotion, you won't just change your mindset. You'll change your results. Because your subconscious isn't your enemy. It's your partner. Once you start speaking its language. And auto-suggestion is how you start the conversation. So now that you know how to rewire your mind with auto-suggestion, let's go into what you're feeding it with. Not just random facts, but specialized knowledge. The next cornerstone in Hill's formula for real achievement. Let me know when you're ready for that section. So far, we've talked about desire, belief, and feeding your mind with intentional thoughts. Now we go into what you're actually feeding it with, because Hill makes a very bold distinction here. And it's one that's still massively misunderstood even today: specialized knowledge vs. general education. And if you've ever felt like school didn't prepare you for real life, Hill would probably agree. He straight up said this: knowledge will not attract money unless it is organized and directed through practical plans of action to the definite end of accumulation of money. That's the key right there. Knowledge by itself isn't power. Knowledge is only potential power. It becomes actual power when it's used for a purpose. And according to Hill, the kind of knowledge that leads to success, financial, creative, or otherwise, is specialized. Let's break this down. General education information overload. This is the stuff you learn in school. History, dates, geometry formulas, random facts across 10 different subjects. Most of it isn't connected to anything real. You learn it to pass tests, not to solve problems. Hill says that kind of learning trains memory, but not imagination or practical action. It creates what he calls, informed failures. People who know a little bit about a lot, but don't know how to use what they know to move toward their goals. That's general education. Specialized knowledge, targeted, purpose-driven skill. This is knowledge you seek out intentionally because it moves you toward a specific goal. It could be how to write persuasive copy, how to market a product online, how to negotiate, how to read financial statements, how to build a YouTube channel, how to build a brand from scratch. These are all specialized. You don't need to know everything to win. You just need to know the right things and apply them. That's the real difference. General education is passive. Specialized knowledge is proactive. You choose what to learn based on what you want to create. And here's something most people miss. You don't have to personally possess all the specialized knowledge yourself. Hill was clear on this. You just have to know where to get it and how to organize it. That could mean reading the right books, taking a course, working with a mentor, building a team, collaborating with people who have the knowledge you don't. Hill said some of the most successful people in the world didn't know everything, but they knew how to gather the right minds around a single vision. So even if you're not an expert in something, if you know how to learn, how to ask, how to connect, you're ahead of 90% of people stuck in general education mode. Example: Henry Ford. This was Hill's favorite go-to example. Ford didn't have a fancy education. He couldn't quote Shakespeare or do calculus, and journalists mocked him for it. One time, a newspaper accused him of being ignorant. He sued them for libel, and during the trial, they grilled him with random trivia questions to try to prove he was uneducated. Eventually, Ford said this: "If I should really want to answer the foolish questions you have just asked me, let me remind you that I have a row of electric push buttons on my desk, and by pushing the right button, I can summon to my aid men who can answer any question I desire to ask." Mech drop. Ford understood the game. He didn't need to memorize everything. He built a system. He had access to the right knowledge, and more importantly, he knew what to do with it. That's specialized knowledge in action. So how do you apply this to your own life? Here's Hill's advice. In simple steps, identify your major purpose. What do you actually want to accomplish? Income goal, creative pursuit, life vision. Whatever it is, be specific. Ask, what kind of knowledge would move me closer to that? Not what school thinks you should know, but what you need to know. Start gathering that knowledge deliberately. Books, podcasts, YouTube, mentorships, direct experience. Doesn't matter the medium, just the direction. Apply it immediately. This is crucial. Don't just learn. Use what you learn. Even if it's small steps, action is how you cement specialized knowledge into real ability. Keep evolving your knowledge as your goals evolve. You don't need to be an expert in everything, but you do need to stay in motion. That's how people win. Not by being the smartest, but by being the most focused. What Hill's really saying here is school might have trained you to be obedient, to memorize, to regurgitate, to follow paths other people created. But success, that's built through applied, evolving, strategic knowledge. Knowledge that solves problems. Knowledge that builds things. Knowledge that you chose on purpose. That's what makes the difference. So no, you don't need a PhD. You don't need to master 15 different skills at once. You need to target your learning the way an archer aims at a bullseye. That's how you take control of your mind, your mission, and eventually, your income and impact. And now that you understand the what behind knowledge, let's talk about the how behind creativity. Because next, we dive into something Hill saw as one of the most powerful tools in your mental toolbox: imagination, not as fantasy, but as a creative force for building your future. Imagination as a creative force. So we've talked about the desire to do something. We've talked about feeding your subconscious the right thoughts through auto-suggestion. We've talked about arming yourself with specialized knowledge. But none of that matters if you can't imagine what to do with it. This is where most people get stuck, not because they don't have ideas, but because they were never taught how to use imagination as a tool. Hill said this directly: imagination is the workshop of the mind. Not a toy, not something you leave behind in childhood. It's a workshop, a space where you take all your raw materials, desire, knowledge, belief, and actually start to build something new. Hill breaks imagination into two types: synthetic imagination, creative imagination, and the difference is important. Synthetic imagination is the most common one. It's when you take existing ideas, concepts, or facts and rearrange them into something useful. It's remixing, like when an entrepreneur sees how Airbnb works and uses a similar model to build a platform for pet sitting, or when a writer studies classic storytelling techniques and uses them to write a modern screenplay. They didn't invent something from scratch. They took pieces that already existed and combined them in a new way. That's synthetic imagination. It's what most people use to create businesses, write content, build systems. It's logical, practical, and insanely powerful when applied deliberately. Creative imagination, on the other hand, that's the big one, the goosebumps one. This is the kind of imagination Hill believed connects you to something beyond yourself. He called it direct link to infinite intelligence. When you've ever had a sudden breakthrough, a flash of insight, a dream that solved a problem, or a weird gut feeling that turned out to be right, that's creative imagination firing. It comes through when your conscious mind is calm, open, and not trying to force anything. Hill believed that every great invention, fortune, and transformation came from a moment of creative imagination, often during a walk, a meditation, or deep focus. So how do you actually use imagination the way Hill intended? Let's walk through that. Step 1: set the stage with intention. Imagination doesn't work well in chaos. You've got to give it something to chew on. That means having a clear goal, a definite purpose, or a problem to solve. Something your mind can work on. Hill didn't believe in random daydreaming. He believed in focused imagination. If you're building a business, imagine the structure. If you're solving a challenge, imagine different outcomes. If you want a certain lifestyle, imagine what it actually looks like down to the details. This is how your subconscious starts looking for solutions you can't see consciously. Step 2: use both forms of imagination together. Let's say you want to launch a course online. You use synthetic imagination to research platforms, see what others are doing, study sales pages, map out what works. Then, during a quiet walk, you get a random download, a course title, a brand hook, or a unique structure no one's done before. That's creative imagination kicking in. And it usually happens after you've immersed yourself in the problem long enough. This is what Hill meant when he said, ideas are the beginning points of all fortunes. But they don't show up just because you want them. They show up when you engage your imagination like a tool, not a fantasy. Step 3: train your imaginative muscle. Hill was clear on this. The more you use your imagination, the stronger it gets. Most people stop using theirs after childhood. They trade it for practicality, logic, safe choices. But imagination isn't childish. It's the most adult thing you can cultivate, because it puts you in the role of creator, not just consumer. He advised setting aside time daily to visualize, to sketch ideas, to ask what-if questions, to mentally rehearse the life you're building. Because again, your subconscious is always listening, and imagination is one of its favorite languages. Example: Thomas Edison. This guy wasn't just an inventor. He was a master of imagination. He didn't just wake up with a light bulb idea. He experimented relentlessly. He studied other systems. But most importantly, he imagined possibilities others didn't see. He was once quoted saying, "I never perfected an invention without imagining it first." That's Hill's entire point in one sentence. Nothing new gets built, not businesses, not breakthroughs, not better lives, without imagination leading the way. So why does this matter now for you? Because if you're only working with logic or facts, or step-by-step plans, you're cutting off half of your mind's power. You can't build a future you can't first imagine. You can't create a business, a relationship, or a new life path without seeing it internally first. Hill believed that imagination is what takes invisible thoughts and starts turning them into visible results. So here's what you do. Set your goal clearly. Surround yourself with inputs, books, models, mentors, and then unplug. Go for a walk. Sit in silence. Let the pieces rearrange, because imagination doesn't scream, it whispers. And if you learn to listen to it, that's where the breakthroughs live. Now, once the idea has taken shape, once the vision is clear and exciting, you can't just sit on it. Which is why Hill's next principle is all about putting it into action, with precision. It's time to talk about organized planning, the blueprint that brings your imagination into the real world. Organized planning and action. So now you've got the desire. You've built belief. You've been feeding your subconscious with auto, suggestion. And you've fired up your imagination, not just to dream, but to create something real. Now comes the part that separates those who get results from those who just talk about them: organized planning and action. This is where the rubber meets the road, and for Hill, it wasn't optional. He said straight up, you cannot succeed without a plan, but not just any plan. A plan that's specific, actionable, and adaptable. Let's get into what that really means. Most people have wishes, not plans. They say things like, one day I'll start my own business. I'd love to write a book. I really want to get out of this job. Cool. But where's the blueprint? Hill said, successful people make decisions quickly and firmly, and change them slowly, if and when they change them at all. That comes from clarity. And clarity comes from planning. So when Hill talks about organized planning, he's talking about engineering your goals into a step-by-step structure. It's the bridge between idea and execution. First, understand that no plan is perfect. Hill didn't expect your first plan to work perfectly. He was very real about this. Most first plans will fail. That's not a reason to stop. That's part of the process. What matters is that you have a structure, something to test, tweak, and refine as you go. He said, temporary defeat is not failure. It may only mean that your plans have not been sound. Rebuild those plans and try again. So take the pressure off of getting it right the first time. Planning isn't about perfection, it's about direction. Here's how Hill breaks down organized plannings. Let's go through the key steps and how to apply them. 1. Ally yourself with a mastermind group. Yep. Planning doesn't happen in a vacuum. Hill said surround yourself with people who can help you refine your plan, execute it, or hold you accountable. That doesn't have to be some formal business circle. It could be a mentor, a friend with complementary skills, or someone who's done what you want to do. He's big on collaboration, and for good reason. It helps eliminate blind spots and keeps your plan grounded in reality too. Write out your plan in detail, not just vague ideas in your head. Put it in writing, with specific steps, dates, responsibilities, and actions. You want something you can look at and say, okay, here's what I do next. Hill believed clarity on paper leads to clarity in execution. Even a simple framework like what's my goal? What's the first measurable step? What resources do I need? Who do I need help from? What's the timeline? That alone puts you ahead of most people who never write anything down. 3. Begin immediately. Even if the plan isn't perfect. This part's huge, Hill insisted. Start where you are, with what you have. Perfection is a trap. Waiting for the right time is just fear in disguise. He said the most successful people he studied acted, often before they felt fully ready. And their momentum created opportunities they couldn't see when they started. So if you've been sitting on an idea, Hill's advice is simple: stop thinking about it. Start doing something about it. Even small actions will give you data, and that data helps you refine your plan further. 4. Test and revise your plan continuously. Hill called this the intelligent use of failure. He wanted you to expect setbacks and see them as feedback, not defeat. So after you act, you review. What worked? What didn't? What needs adjusting? This is where most people fall off. They try once, it doesn't go as expected, and they quit. But Hill's successful subjects, they never quit on the goal. They just changed the plan until it worked. Example: Thomas Edison. Again, Edison tested over 10,000 different materials before inventing the working light bulb. Someone asked him if he felt like a failure. He said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's the mindset Hill wanted you to adopt. Organized planning is not a one-time thing. It's a living, evolving process, and action is what keeps it alive. So how do you build your own organized plan? Try this simple exercise based on Hill's principles first. Define your specific goal, not make money, but earn $5,000 per month through freelance writing by December. Second, list out every skill, resource, or step you think you need. Don't worry about it being perfect. Just brain dump. Third, decide who you need help from. Mentors, teammates, books, communities. Build your mastermind, even informally. Fourth, write out a timeline with milestones. Break it down by week or month. Fifth, act immediately. Do something today. Email someone. Create the landing page. Set up the offer. Sixth, review weekly. Ask, what's moving the needle? What's not? What needs to change? That's your real-time feedback loop. That's how you adapt while staying on track. People often wait for motivation to strike, but Hill believed motivation follows action. It doesn't come before it, so don't wait to feel ready. Start building, start testing, start moving. Because once your plan starts gaining traction, once results start coming in, even small ones, you build a kind of internal momentum that becomes hard to stop. And once that's rolling, you'll need to sharpen your next edge. The one thing that holds plans together when the excitement fades: decision. Next up, how mastering decisions, sevas, and avoiding indecision is one of Hill's most underrated secrets to success. Decision mastery over indecision. Let's be real for a second. Everyone has ideas. Everyone has dreams. Most people even start things, but not everyone finishes. Not everyone follows through. Not everyone decides. And according to Napoleon Hill, this is the point where success either begins or dies quietly. He said, analysis of several hundred people who had accumulated fortunes well beyond the $1 million mark disclosed the fact that every one of them had the habit of reaching decisions promptly. Promptly. That's the key word. They didn't wait around for signs. They didn't crowdsource their confidence. They made the call and adapted later. Because indecision, that's not just harmless hesitation. In Hill's world, indecision is the silent killer of desire. It slowly dissolves your momentum, delays your action, and gives fear the perfect place to grow. The truth is, indecision feels safe. You're not saying yes. You're not saying no. You're just thinking about it. But while you're thinking, someone else is deciding. While you're hesitating, someone else is shipping, building, launching, learning. Hill believed that successful people, from Carnegie to Ford to Edison, had this uncanny ability to decide fast and stick with it unless new information demanded a change. Not because they were reckless, but because they trusted their process. Here's the deeper layer of Hill's thinking. Indecision is rooted in fear, and the longer you entertain indecision, the louder that fear gets. What if I'm wrong? What if I fail? What if people judge me? But decision, even imperfect decision, cuts the noise. You say, this is what I'm doing. This is when I'm starting. This is how far I'll go before I pivot. It draws a line in the sand, and that gives your mind something to organize around. So how do you build this decision-making habit? Let's walk through Hill's mindset step by step. 1. Value speed over perfection. Hill wasn't saying, make decisions carelessly. He was saying, make them fast enough to build momentum. You don't need 100% certainty. You don't need every fact. You need enough information to move. The faster you decide, the faster you learn. And learning fast is how you outpace people waiting for the perfect path. Hill saw this again and again in the millionaires he studied. They'd rather be decisive and wrong than indecisive and stuck. 2. Stop asking everyone's opinion. This is big, Hill said. Tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it. Most people leak energy by constantly talking about their plans and asking others if it's a good idea. They drown their own inner voice in noise. Hill warned against this. He saw too many people get talked out of good ideas by people who never built anything. So next time you're stuck in decision loop mode, Ask yourself, am I gathering insight, or am I gathering permission? There's a difference. Insight helps. Permission holds you back. 3. Make micro decisions quickly. Every day is full of small decisions that either sharpen your clarity or dull it. What to focus on today? Whether to hit publish, whether to email that person, whether to say yes to the new opportunity. Start small. Build the muscle. Because when you can decide quickly in the small things, you train yourself to move decisively in the big things. And that builds internal trust. You stop second-guessing. You start moving. Hill gave a real-world example. Henry Ford. Ford once made a decision to continue producing his now famous Model T, even when advisors and competitors told him to shift directions. He was slow to change it, maybe even too slow. But his firmness in decision was a core reason behind his long-term success. He had a clear vision, and he wasn't swayed by every outside opinion or market fear. Hill said this wasn't just personality, it was principle, and you can develop it the same way Ford did, through clarity, purpose, and repetition. When you delay a decision, here's what actually happens. You give power to fear. You create mental clutter. You waste emotional energy running loops. But when you decide, even if it's a small next step, you clear mental space. You create new momentum. You build identity as someone who moves, not waits. And that shift, that identity shift, is what Hill was really after. He didn't just want you to act once. He wanted you to become someone who makes moves consistently. Try this. Think about something you've been sitting on. Something you've been circling around, overthinking. Now ask, what am I afraid of? What's the next smallest decision I can make? What would it look like to decide today, not later? Then do it. That one decision can break the cycle, and once that cycle breaks, the next action gets easier. Because here's the real power in decision, making it forces commitment. And once you're committed, your brain starts solving problems differently. You stop looking for ways out. You start looking for ways through. That's what separates the few who rise from the many who stall out. And here's the thing, once the decision is made, you need to back it up. Every single day, even when it's hard. That's where the grit kicks in. And that brings us straight into the next essential principle in Hill's philosophy, maybe the most underestimated one of all: persistence. Persistence, the power of repetition. Here's the uncomfortable truth: most people don't fail because they didn't have a good idea, or because they weren't smart enough, or talented enough, or lucky enough. They fail because they stop too soon, too often, right before things were about to click. And Napoleon Hill, he saw this pattern over and over again. He said, persistence is to the character of man as carbon is to steel. Without it, you stay soft. You break under pressure, you don't last. But with it, you become unshakable. Let's break it down. Persistence isn't about dramatic, all-day grinding. It's not about being the loudest hustler in the room. It's about showing up again, and again, and again. Even when it's boring, even when it's slow, even when you're not sure it's working. Hill saw persistence as a habit of mindset, something anyone could develop, no matter their background or personality, because repetition isn't just a tool, it's the pathway. Most people mistake motion for progress. They try something once or twice. They don't see big results. They assume it's not working, and they move on to the next shiny thing. But Hill's philosophy is brutally clear. There may be no heroic connotation to the word persistence, but the quality is to the character of man what carbon is to steel. Translation: you can have talent, you can have vision, but without grit, you stay average. So where does persistence come from? Hill laid out 4 essential foundations for building it. 1. A clear purpose backed by burning desire. You have to really want it. That's why desire was Hill's first principle, because it fuels everything else. When the goal is vague, you give up. When the why is shallow, you rationalize quitting. But when the desire runs deep, you find reasons to keep going, even when things suck. 2. A definite plan. Not a fantasy, not a someday wish, but a written, structured path that gives you something to return to when your emotions get loud. Your plan becomes your anchor. It keeps you grounded when doubt starts whispering. 3. A mind closed against all negative influences. That includes other people's fears, their doubt, their projections. Hill was very real about this. You will be tested. People will question you. Distractions will pile up. You'll start to question yourself. And if your mind is open to every little voice that says, maybe this won't work, you'll believe them. But if you've trained yourself to stay locked in, you'll outlast the noise. 4. A friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage you. Hill's not saying you need a full-on accountability partner, but he is saying don't try to do it completely alone. The right people, even just one or two, who believe in your vision, who reflect your belief back to you when you're tired, that's fuel. And when persistence fades, fuel matters. Think about this. Hill studied hundreds of successful people. Not one of them made it without persistence. They were rejected. They went broke. They were ridiculed. They failed publicly. But they kept going. Over and over again. Edison failed 10,000 times before the light bulb worked. Colonel Sanders, 1,000 rejections before KFC took off. Hill himself took over 20 years to get Think and Grow Rich published the way he wanted. 20 years. Would you stick with something that long, could you? If your desire is strong enough. Yes. That's what persistence actually looks like. And here's where repetition ties in. Persistence isn't just mental toughness. It's also neurological. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Repeating actions literally rewires the brain. New beliefs, new patterns, new habits. They don't happen in one breakthrough moment. They happen through consistent repetition. That's how you reprogram the subconscious. The same one Hill said controls 95% of your behavior. So every time you say the affirmation, write the goal down, stick to the plan for one more day, reframe a failure as feedback, you're reinforcing new neural pathways. And over time, that repetition becomes identity. Not, I'm someone who wants success, but I'm someone who shows up no matter what. That's powerful. Quick reality check. You're going to have days where nothing clicks. You'll write things that get no views. Launch things that flop. Make offers that no one buys. Feel like you're moving in slow motion while everyone else is sprinting. That's normal. The difference is, most people quit in those moments. You don't. Not if you're living Hill's philosophy. Because those days, that's where persistence starts. When it's not fun. When no one's watching. When there's no instant reward. Those are the reps that matter most. One small exercise to build this muscle. Pick one habit. Just one, tied to your goal. Make it so simple it's almost laughable, and do it every day for 30 days. Not for motivation, not for performance, just for identity. Prove to yourself, I'm the kind of person who follows through. And once that's real, everything else gets easier. Because now you're not fighting yourself, you've built proof. And your subconscious knows. You finish what you start. So yeah, persistence might not sound sexy. But in Hill's world, it's one of the rarest forms of power, and it leads us straight into something even more collaborative. The force multiplier that helped turn good ideas into unstoppable empires. The Mastermind Group. The Mastermind Group concept. All right, so you've got the desire. You've got the faith. You're showing up, repeating the process, building persistence like a machine. But Napoleon Hill knew something most lone wolves don't want to hear. You can't do it all by yourself. And not because you're weak. Not because you lack intelligence or discipline. But because success at the highest level isn't just about effort. It's about leverage. This is where the mastermind group comes in. Hill called it the coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. Sounds simple. But the way Hill described it, it was almost mystical. He didn't just see it as a group of smart people brainstorming. He believed that when two or more minds come together, aligned toward a single goal, something bigger gets created, a kind of third mind, an invisible force, a higher intelligence that none of them could access on their own. Think about that for a second. You've got your own ideas, your own experience, your own problem-solving style. But the second you lock arms with someone equally committed, someone who sees from a different angle, who challenges your blind spots, who expands your thinking, you've just multiplied your potential. Hill believed this. Collective intelligence was the real engine behind the greatest business empires and innovations. Here's how he saw it play out. Look at Andrew Carnegie, one of the wealthiest men in history. Hill said Carnegie didn't rise to power because he had all the answers himself. He rose because he built a mastermind, a tightly coordinated group of men around him who each brought specialized knowledge to the table. They weren't yes men. They were thinkers, strategists, executors, and Carnegie's genius was that he trusted them to do what he couldn't, while aligning them around one dominant goal. So what does this look like in real life? It's not about starting a big company or forming some secret society. A mastermind can be 2 people, 3 people, 5 tops. What matters isn't the number. It's the quality of intention and alignment. These are the people who keep you accountable, challenge your assumptions, share their resources, offer feedback without ego, want to see you win. Not just in theory, but in action. This is not your group chat. This is not your comment section. This is a sacred alliance. That's the energy Hill was pointing to. Why is this so powerful? Because when you're in it alone, your progress is limited by your perspective. You only see what you can see. You only know what you've experienced. But in a mastermind, you gain access to years of insight instantly. You cut through trial and error faster. You borrow courage when yours is low. You adopt disciplines just by being around people who expect more from themselves. It's not about hype. It's about environment. Let's talk science for a second. Modern neuroscience actually backs this up. There's a principle called social facilitation, the idea that we perform better when we're being observed by others we respect. It's not just accountability. It's biological. Your brain kicks into higher gear. Focus sharpens. Discipline increases. Same action. Better output, just because of who you're around. Hill didn't know the neuroscience behind it at the time, but he saw the pattern so clearly it became one of his core principles of achievement. But here's the catch. Not every group is a mastermind. Just because you have business friends doesn't mean you're in a growth alliance. Hill laid out a few criteria that matter. Definiteness of purpose. Everyone in the group is aligned around achieving something real, not just talking about ideas. Harmony. This isn't about arguing or dominating. The spirit has to be cooperative, not competitive. Trust. Information shared must stay in the circle. Vulnerability is part of the process. Contribution. You don't just take. You show up with your best thinking, your full presence. If one of those is missing, it breaks, and the mastermind loses its power. Here's how to build one. You don't wait to be invited. You initiate. Start with one person you admire, someone with drive, curiosity, and integrity. Propose a simple structure, weekly or bi-weekly calls, 60 to 90 minutes, rotate who shares and who listens. Focus on real-world execution, not theory. From there, you'll know whether to expand or keep it tight. But the real key, consistency. The longer the group stays intact, the deeper the synergy gets. You learn each other's patterns. You push past surface level goals, You build momentum together. And that's where Hill said the real power emerges. So ask yourself, who are you building with? Who's challenging you to level up? Who are you thinking with? Not just talking to. Because if you want to go fast, sure, go alone. But if you want to go far and stay sane while doing it, you need a mastermind. That's the lever Hill used to help unlock millionaires, leaders, inventors, world changers. And once you've got that kind of alliance, you've got the fuel for the next level, even for forces most people never think to direct towards success. Which brings us right to one of the most fascinating and misunderstood ideas Hill ever talked about: the transmutation of sexual energy. Let me know when you're ready to dive into that one. Transmutation of sexual energy. This is where Napoleon Hill gets a little unexpected. Because after talking about desire, belief, imagination, planning, action, he suddenly drops this principle that makes most people go, wait, what? Sex transmutation. Yeah, you heard that right. In Think and Grow Rich, Hill didn't shy away from it. He called sexual energy one of the most powerful forces a human being possesses. But, and here's the catch, he wasn't talking about sex for pleasure, or lust, or anything superficial. He was talking about harnessing that energy, redirecting it, and converting it into creative power, focus, drive, and achievement. What did Hill mean by transmutation? Let's strip it down. Transmute just means to change something from one form to another. Hill believed sexual energy, which is the most intense physical and emotional energy we have, can be rerouted. Not suppressed, not ignored, but channeled into business, into art, into ideas, into legacy. He said, sex energy is the creative energy of all geniuses. Big claim, right? But let's break it down. Think about it. Sexual energy is raw life force. It's the root of desire. It fuels reproduction. It's connected to emotion, movement, attraction, obsession, creation. All of it. It's not just biological. It's psychological. It's spiritual. Now imagine taking that same intensity, that same level of fixation, that same hunger, and instead of releasing it for temporary relief, you rewire it. You push it into your goals, your creations, your vision. That's what Hill meant by transmutation. It's not about celibacy. Let's clear that up. Hill didn't say, never have sex. He wasn't preaching abstinence or becoming a monk. He said, if you're addicted to the physical expression, and you let it control you, it'll drain your focus, distract your mind, and kill your momentum. But if you learn how to use that energy, you become a different animal. You stop chasing and start creating. Let's connect this with some science. Modern psychology and neuroscience actually back up what Hill was sensing back in the 1930s. When you're sexually aroused, your body produces testosterone, which drives ambition, confidence, risk-taking dopamine, the motivation and reward chemical norepinephrine, which boosts alertness and focus. Now imagine those chemicals not just stimulating your body, but firing up your creative output, your business energy, your mental clarity. That's the power of transmutation. You're literally reallocating energy from pleasure, seeking to purpose building. Here's how this played out in Hill's research. He studied some of the most successful men of his era, and you know what he noticed. They weren't emotionless robots. They weren't celibate saints. They were intense, often charismatic, almost always driven by some emotional, often romantic fire. But they used that drive as fuel, not a distraction. Hill said, the men of greatest achievement are men with highly developed sex natures, men who have learned the art of sex transmutation. Think inventors, artists, leaders, visionaries. They took that primal fire and aimed it. That's the key, aiming the energy. So what does this mean practically? You don't need to suppress your natural desires. You don't need to feel guilty for being a sexual human being. But you do need to be honest. How much energy are you leaking into distractions? How often do you chase instant gratification instead of long-term creation? How powerful could you become if you redirected even half of that energy into something bigger? This is about discipline, not denial. It's about intentional direction. Hill's point wasn't, don't be sexual. It was, be powerful enough to choose how you use that energy. How to start transmuting. This isn't some mystical ritual. It's about awareness and redirection. Here's a simple daily practice. When you feel a strong pull of sexual energy, don't immediately react to it. Pause. Feel it, acknowledge it, recognize it as power. Ask yourself, what could I create with this energy instead? Channel it, write, build, strategize, plan, execute. You'll be amazed at how much sharper your mind gets when you're not constantly draining your focus with short-term release. Over time, your brain adapts. You build a new circuit, and you start to feel more powerful, more clear, more in control. This is transmutation in action. Final thought: most people never touch their highest level of drive, not because they don't have goals, but because they've never learned to master their own impulses. Hill knew, if you can control the strongest energy inside you, you can control everything else. And that's why this principle isn't just some side note in the book. It's a gateway to genius. Master this, and you unlock something deeper than motivation. You tap into a permanent engine, and once you're running on that, well, the subconscious mind, the real gatekeeper of your behavior, becomes a lot easier to influence. The subconscious mind as a bridge. If you've made it this far, you already know. Hill wasn't just talking about surface-level self-help. He was going deep into how your mind works, how it responds, how it either builds your future or buries it. And right at the center of all that, the subconscious mind. Now, Hill didn't see the subconscious as some vague, mysterious thing that psychologists throw around in books. He saw it as a literal bridge, a transmitter, a filter, one that connects your thoughts with your reality, your desires with your results, your conscious intention with your deeper programming. And here's the wild part: it's always listening, always working, whether you realize it or not. Let's break it down. You've got two parts of your mind working at all times: the conscious mind. That's the part of you that plans, reasons, makes decisions. The subconscious mind. That's the part that holds your beliefs, your habits, your emotional memory, your fears, your defaults. Now here's the deal. The subconscious doesn't think. It reacts. It doesn't argue. It doesn't reason. It just accepts whatever gets fed into it over and over. Thoughts, words, emotions, experiences. It stores them. It builds patterns out of them, and then it acts on them. Through your behavior, your body, your instincts, without even asking permission. So why did Hill call it a bridge? Because the subconscious sits between your thoughts and your reality. What you think and feel most consistently, not just once, but repeatedly, gets passed down into this deeper layer of mind, and once it's locked in there, it becomes automatic. That's what makes this thing so powerful. It's not about willpower. It's not about forcing motivation every morning. It's about reprogramming your system, so success becomes your default, not your struggle. Hill said this: the subconscious mind is more susceptible to influence by impulses of thought mixed with feeling or emotion than by those originating solely in the reasoning portion of the mind. Translation: if you want to imprint something into your subconscious, don't just think it, feel it. That's the language your subconscious understands. Emotion, repetition, intensity. So, when you combine a burning desire with repeated thought and strong emotion behind it, boom, that's when it starts to get embedded. That's when the bridge forms, and your outer world starts to catch up to the signals you've been firing inside. Think of it like this: your subconscious is the soil. Your thoughts are the seeds, but only the seeds you plant repeatedly and emotionally are going to grow. So if you've been walking around thinking, I'm not good enough, or success is hard, or things never work out for me, guess what gets planted, and guess what starts growing, whether you want it to or not. Hill didn't say this to scare people. He said it to wake them up, because once you understand this process, you can start feeding your mind something better. Now let's get a little practical. How do you start using the subconscious the way Hill intended? Here's what he laid out, and what aligns with modern psychology. First, definite chief aim. You need a clear goal, something specific, something you want, not just something you think you should want. Second, affirm it with emotion. You can't just read a goal off a paper like a robot. You've got to feel it. You've got to imagine it as if it's already real. That's how it sinks in. Third, repeat it daily, morning, night, during the day, over and over, not as a chant but as a command, a real decision. Your subconscious listens through repetition + emotion. Fourth, guard what you let in. If your subconscious is always recording, then what you watch, who you talk to, what you say to yourself, all of that matters. Everything is data. Everything is influence. This is where things start getting serious. Because your subconscious isn't just affecting your thoughts. It's shaping how you move, how you act, how you respond to opportunity. Hill believed that once the subconscious is trained to expect success, it starts aligning you with the people, ideas, and timing to make it happen. Sound too mystical? Modern science says otherwise. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repetition and emotional experience. And psychology backs it up with studies on priming, habit formation, and self-fulfilling prophecy. In other words, what you believe on a subconscious level, it's not just inner talk. It's literally influencing how your brain functions. Hill didn't have fMRI machines to back him up in 1937, but he understood the mechanism through results. Over and over, the people he studied, millionaires, leaders, creators, had one thing in common. They believed, deep down, that success was inevitable. And their subconscious minds were wired to match that belief. So the real question isn't, does it work? The question is, what's your subconscious program to expect right now? Because it's already working, either for you or against you. And if you're not consciously planting the right ideas, the right beliefs, the right emotional commands, then you're leaving that bridge wide open to old patterns, fears, doubts, noise. But once you take control, once you start programming it deliberately, that's when everything starts to move faster. Not just because you're working harder, but because your mind, your emotions, your instincts, your entire system is moving in one direction, forward. That's what Hill wanted to unlock in people. That's what this bridge was built for. And once it's strong enough, you'll start tuning into something even deeper, beyond logic, beyond thought, something Hill only referred to as the brain as a broadcasting station. The brain as a broadcasting station. Now here's where Hill really starts pulling back the curtain. Because up until now, we've been talking about goals, thoughts, repetition, belief, subconscious programming, all very internal. But in this next idea, he flips the lens outward. Hill said your brain isn't just a container of thoughts, it's a transmitter, a broadcasting station. Sounds wild, right? But he wasn't speaking metaphorically. He meant that literally. According to Hill, your brain has the power to send out vibrations of thought, just like a radio station transmits signals. And more than that, it also receives them. Let's take this step by step. First, what's a broadcasting station? It's something that sends out a frequency. You can't see it, touch it, or hold it, but it's real. It moves through space and reaches someone tuned in to the same frequency. And Hill believed the mind works the same way. He said that every thought you think, especially thoughts charged with emotion and repetition, generate a vibration, a frequency. And those thought frequencies aren't just bouncing around inside your head. They're being broadcast outward, constantly. So why does this matter? Because if your brain is broadcasting something all the time, then what are you transmitting? Doubt, scarcity, fear, or clarity, confidence, certainty. Hill believed that when your thoughts are powerful, focused, and emotionally charged, they begin to affect the world around you. They attract people, resources, ideas on that same frequency. This is where he begins to overlap with concepts like the law of attraction. But Hill never used those words. He wasn't into fluff. He was into observation. And what he saw over and over was that the most successful people seemed to draw opportunities to them. They didn't just chase. They attracted. Not magically, but through a strong internal signal that influenced their actions, their timing, and even their relationships. Here's what Hill wrote. Every human brain is both a broadcasting and receiving station for the vibration of thought. And later, when stimulated or stepped up to a high rate of vibration, the mind becomes more receptive to thought which reaches it from outside sources. So this isn't just about your own thoughts. It's about your ability to tune into ideas, inspiration, and even guidance. From people, from energy, from what he called infinite intelligence. Now again, this sounds esoteric, but think about it. How often have you had a gut feeling, a random idea that seemed to come from nowhere, or someone calls you right when you were thinking about them? Coincidence? Maybe. But Hill believed those were real transmissions, mental energy picked up across invisible channels. Let's bring in some modern context. We now know the human brain emits electrical activity. Through EEG machines, we can measure brainwaves, alpha, beta, theta, delta. That's not theory. That's neuroscience. Your thoughts literally have a frequency, and emotions. They amplify those frequencies, which lines up perfectly with what Hill was saying nearly 100 years ago, that emotionally charged thoughts are the most powerful broadcasts. And if that's true, then mastering your thoughts isn't just about internal peace. It's about shaping your external reality, because your energy is influencing how people perceive you, how you show up, and even the circumstances you draw in. Here's how Hill said to use this. He didn't just say, think positive. He laid out a strategy. Stimulate your mind daily with your burning desire. Visualize it. Feel it. Speak it aloud. Let the emotion build until it's real inside your nervous system. Use auto-suggestion to program your broadcast. Your affirmations aren't just for you. They're like signals. They shape the vibration you're sending out, whether it's fear or power. Stay in environments that reinforce the frequency. You can't tune into abundance while swimming in scarcity energy all day. Conversations, content, music, everything. It all affects the signal. Use the Mastermind principle. Surround yourself with people who are tuned to a similar vibration. Hill said when two minds connect with a shared purpose, a third, invisible mind is formed. That's the amplified broadcast. So you're not just programming your brain. You're becoming a living, thinking transmission tower. And the stronger your broadcast becomes, the more powerful your pull becomes. Here's a simple example. Ever met someone whose energy you just felt? They didn't have to say much, didn't have to try hard, but their presence hit different. That's not random. That's their signal. It's coming from what they believe, what they feel, what they expect, deep down. And when your broadcast gets strong enough, you become that person for others. You walk into rooms differently. Opportunities start showing up. Ideas come faster. People respond better. Because they're not just responding to your words. They're reacting to your signal. Final thought. Hill wasn't asking you to believe in magic. He was asking you to get conscious of your frequency. Because if the brain is a station, constantly broadcasting and receiving, then every thought you have is either attracting what you want or repelling it, and you're never not sending out a signal. So the question is, what station are you tuned to? Because the stronger the signal, the clearer the reception. And when you align that with belief, desire, persistence, and vision, you start tapping into a whole other layer of intelligence. A layer Hill only hinted at next, the mystery of the sixth sense. The mystery of the sixth sense. Now this is where Hill took it all the way. You've gone through desire, faith, the subconscious, auto, suggestion, planning, persistence, even the mind as a broadcasting station. But what if there was something beyond all of that? Something that kicks in only after you've done everything else, something you can't force, but can tap into if you've prepared yourself. Hill called it the sixth sense. Not in the psychic Hollywood way, not as some supernatural party trick, but as a very real, very subtle ability that activates only when the other principles have been fully mastered. So what exactly is the sixth sense? Hill described it as the door to the temple of wisdom. He said it's that flash of insight, that sudden gut feeling that proves right, that warning you get before something bad happens, or that nudge toward a decision you didn't logically plan, but later realized was absolutely correct. It's not imagination, not reasoning, not emotion. It's deeper than all of them. It's something that comes through you, not from you. And here's what makes it wild: you can't control when it shows up, but you can prepare yourself to receive it. Hill wrote, "This principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated only by first mastering the other 12 principles." So this isn't for beginners. This isn't step 1. This is the capstone. The final unlock. The sixth sense, in Hill's model, is like a direct line to infinite intelligence. That unseen force that connects everything. He didn't claim to understand how it works. He just knew it did. And if you talk to anyone who's spent years building something meaningful, a business, a creative body of work, a mission, they'll tell you the same thing eventually. Your instincts sharpen. Ideas start flowing out of nowhere. You make choices that seem random, but prove to be exactly right. That's the sixth sense. It's intuition on fire. But here's the key: Hill didn't say it just shows up randomly. He said it's a byproduct of deep, intentional mental conditioning. You want the sixth sense to show up? Then go back to the basics. Obsess over a clear, definite purpose. Feed it into your subconscious day and night. Take action even when it's uncomfortable. Persist beyond logic or convenience. Surround yourself with minds that elevate you. All of this builds mental momentum. And when that momentum reaches a certain peak, a kind of inner alignment, that's when the sixth sense starts firing. Not as a whisper, as a download. Let's ground this with an example. Think of great inventors, writers, entrepreneurs, creators. They all talk about moments where an idea just hits them. In the shower, while driving, while walking, sometimes in dreams. It's not something they were consciously working on, but it ties together everything they've been immersed in. Hill believed that's the sixth sense. It's your mind acting as a receiver, and once it's been conditioned with obsession, desire, focus, and clarity, it starts picking up signals from beyond the conscious mind. Almost like a tuning fork, almost like you've cracked into a frequency that most people never reach. And you can't fake it. You can't skip to this step. It only becomes active after you've trained your mind through discipline, repetition, and intense belief. Some people hear all this and go, "Okay, but this sounds spiritual." And Hill would agree. Because to him, the sixth sense wasn't just about the mind. It was the place where the mind meets spirit. He referred to it as the medium through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily. You don't command it. You don't schedule it. You simply prepare for it. And when it arrives, you listen. Because this isn't the voice of fear. It's not second guessing or anxiety. It's clarity. Pure, calm, deep-rooted knowing. It shows up when logic fails, when planning is done, when you're on the edge of something bigger. Here's the deeper takeaway. The sixth sense isn't about predicting lottery numbers. It's about developing a mental sensitivity to life itself. It's the part of you that senses timing, that recognizes truth even before your mind has caught up, that guides you when no one else can. And Hill's point was this: everyone has access to it. But most people never reach it, because they never go deep enough with the first 12 principles. They don't condition their thoughts. They don't trust their emotions. They don't persist long enough. They don't cultivate the stillness required to hear it. But when you do, something activates. And it's not based on chance. It's built through intention. Final thought: the sixth sense is the reward at the end of the path. It's what happens when your mind, body, spirit, and mission are fully aligned. It's not louder than the world. It's just clearer, once you've learned how to listen. And when it speaks, it never shouts. It nudges. It whispers. It guides. That's what Hill wanted people to reach. Not just wealth or success, but inner mastery. And that's why, in his final pages, he doesn't focus on tactics. He focuses on energy, connection, intelligence, flow. Because at that point, success isn't something you chase. It becomes something you tune into. And that leads us straight into Hill's most esoteric, and perhaps most powerful, idea yet: the esoteric side of Hill's teachings. The esoteric side of Hill's teachings. Now we step fully into the part of Hill's philosophy that doesn't get talked about enough. Because most people, when they hear Think and Grow Rich, they focus on the title. They treat it like a manual for making money. Steps, tactics, habits, discipline. But if you read carefully, and especially if you pay attention to the parts Hill only briefly touches, you'll realize he was pointing to something much, much deeper. He wasn't just giving you business advice. He was guiding you into a state of awareness. This was spiritual work disguised as self-help. He knew it. And he told us, subtly, over and over again. Let's rewind for a second. Throughout the book and his lectures, Hill constantly references something beyond the physical. Infinite intelligence, the sixth sense, the subconscious as a gateway. Vibrations of thought, mental transmutation, and success as an expression of universal laws. That's not standard productivity talk. That's esoteric. Hill was saying, the mind is not just a thinking machine. It's a spiritual tool. And when you align your thoughts, emotions, and actions, not just with desire, but with a higher purpose, you begin to move in harmony with something greater than yourself. Now, let's break this down. What did Hill mean by infinite intelligence? He never fully defines it, but he does say it's a source of ideas, guidance, instinct, a power that flows through everything. He says it's what the sixth sense taps into. It's where hunches and sudden breakthroughs come from. It's what every great leader, artist, and visionary has learned to trust. Some people would call it God. Some call it the universe. Some just call it flow. Hill wasn't trying to label it. He was trying to get you to feel it. And his suggestion was simple. You don't need to understand infinite intelligence. You just need to align with it. How do you align? By mastering your thoughts, by disciplining your emotions, by building habits that serve your highest vision, by keeping your mind so focused, so dialed in, that it becomes a channel, not just a processor. You've heard him say it already. Thoughts are things. But more specifically, thoughts are creative forces. And Hill believed that the more deliberately you think, the more intentionally you live, the more you align with these subtle, universal laws, He saw wealth and achievement as natural side effects of this alignment, not the goal. That's the shift most people miss. Here's where it gets even deeper. Hill also believed that your emotional state affects your energetic frequency. He talked about vibrations of fear vs. vibrations of faith. He warned that negative emotions, anger, jealousy, doubt, literally drop your energetic output. And when your output drops, your connection weakens. Think of it like tuning a radio. If you're filled with fear and doubt, you're tuning into static. The signal gets lost. You can't receive guidance. You miss ideas. You hesitate instead of act. But when you're in alignment, when your emotions are clear, strong, elevated, the signal becomes crisp. The downloads come faster. The timing gets tighter. Your path unfolds with less resistance. Hill's big idea was this: success is spiritual. He just didn't market it that way, because he knew the world wasn't ready for it in the 1930s. So he encoded it. He buried it beneath layers of practical language, persistence, planning, desire, because those were things people could understand. But under all of that, he was pointing toward a reality where thought affects matter, emotion shapes experience, vibration influences opportunity, and the mind, when properly trained, becomes a channel for universal intelligence. That's not just self-help, that's metaphysical philosophy. And if you still think that's a stretch, Hill literally said, there is a power, or a first cause, or an intelligence, which permeates every atom of matter and embraces every unit of energy perceptible to man. He called this intelligence infinite. And he believed that human beings could partner with it, not by prayer alone, not by wishful thinking, but by deliberate, repeated inner work. That's the part most people skip. They read the book and think it's about getting rich. They don't realize Hill was giving them the key to conscious creation. One more thing Hill hinted at. Very subtly, he believed that your true power comes when your desire serves something bigger than yourself. This isn't about selfish goals. This is about aligning your personal ambitions with universal good, with contribution, with evolution, with service. When your desires are selfish, the universe doesn't respond as clearly. But when they're expansive, when they lift others, when they grow something greater, your broadcast sharpens. Your energy amplifies. Hill knew this. He didn't preach it. He didn't shout about it. He whispered it between the lines. Final thought. If you want to understand the full power of Napoleon Hill's teachings, you can't just read the book. You have to live the philosophy. You have to do the reps. Sit with your mind. Clear out the noise. Strengthen the signal. Trust the nudges. And allow something deeper to move through you. Because behind the chapters and the checklists was a man trying to hand you more than strategy. He was handing you a spiritual system of creation. And the deeper you go into it, the more it stops being about success and starts being about becoming the kind of person success is drawn to, naturally. That's the real secret. And that flows perfectly into what Hill explores next, the spiritual energy of success. The spiritual energy of success. This is where Hill's work stops sounding like personal development and starts feeling like a transmission. Because everything up until now, desire, faith, planning, imagination, subconscious mind, sixth sense, all of it leads to this core truth: success isn't just about mechanics. It's about energy, real, spiritual, magnetic energy, and not in some abstract, floaty, feel-good way. Hill meant something very specific here. He was talking about the kind of energy you generate when your thoughts, emotions, intentions, and actions all line up and point in the same direction. That energy, it moves things, it attracts, it shapes reality. It opens doors that logic can't explain. Let's be clear, Hill was not a priest, not a preacher, not a mystic, but he did believe that every human being carries an invisible force, and that this force gets amplified when you live with purpose. He called it spiritual energy because, to him, it wasn't physical. You couldn't measure it. You couldn't put it under a microscope. But it had an effect, and it was real. Think about it. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the energy shift? Someone walks in, and they don't even speak, but everyone looks up. Something about them feels solid, powerful, magnetic. That's what Hill was pointing to. Success, he said, wasn't just built on effort. It was radiated from within, and that radiance comes from alignment. So what creates this spiritual energy? Hill never gives a single answer. But if you track his writing, it becomes clear. It's the result of a burning desire, faith so strong it reshapes your beliefs, your emotional mastery. Using fear, anger, love, excitement as fuel, repetition, and ritual. Training your mind through autosuggestion, a deep belief in service. That your goals lift others, not just yourself, a mind constantly connected to a higher source. Infinite intelligence and daily action that proves you're serious. All of these create a charge, a field, a current. And when you're plugged into that current, you move differently. You speak with more clarity. You trust your instincts. You walk into situations with confidence that's not fake, because it's not rooted in ego. It's rooted in alignment. That's spiritual energy. And that's what makes success inevitable, not over time. Because energy compounds. Here's something else Hill hinted at. You're either broadcasting or blocking. There's no neutral. If your energy is scattered, if you're full of fear, doubt, hesitation, resentment, you might be doing all the right steps on the outside, but you're short-circuiting your power on the inside. And Hill wasn't shy about this. He said you can't deceive the laws that govern success. You might fake belief with your words, but your energy doesn't lie. And the results you get, they match your vibration, not your goals. So if you want more powerful results, you don't chase more tactics. You tune your energy. You go inward. You clear out static. You recalibrate. Because when you're tuned in, your thoughts carry weight. Your words hit different. Your presence becomes a tool for creation. This is why Hill placed so much emphasis on things like repetition, affirmation, intention, visualization, emotional transmutation, and belief. It's not about being blindly positive. It's about building energetic momentum. And once that momentum is strong enough, it starts to do the work for you. You'll notice synchronicities. You'll meet people who align perfectly with your path. You'll get gut feelings you can actually trust. You'll make decisions faster, and they'll be right more often than not. That's not luck. That's what happens when your spiritual energy is in sync with your vision. Hill even hinted that this energy affects others. Think about it. Have you ever been around someone who made you feel calm just by being present? Or someone whose drive pulled you into action? That's spiritual energy in motion. It's contagious, and Hill believed that part of leadership, real leadership, was about radiating that energy to influence the minds of others. Not manipulation, but inspiration. Because when people feel that you're connected to something bigger, they naturally follow your lead. That's not charisma. That's alignment, projected outward. Now here's the part most people skip. Spiritual energy isn't something you have once and keep forever. You generate it daily, through habits, through clarity, through silence and action and faith and focus. It requires maintenance, like a fire that needs fuel, like a current that needs direction. If you neglect it, if you fall into fear, doubt, routine, that energy dims, not gone, but muted. That's why Hill kept saying, review your desires, guard your thoughts, choose your environment, keep your emotional state clean, because those are the levers. Not hustle, not grind, but energetic clarity. And when that's strong, results follow. Final thought: Hill's greatest message wasn't get rich. It was become powerful from the inside out, not with ego, but with conviction, with belief so deep it reshapes your reality, with a mission so alive it electrifies you, with thoughts so tuned they become magnetic. That's the real success. The kind that doesn't come and go, the kind that doesn't burn you out, the kind that spreads to your work, your relationships, your legacy. Because when your energy is aligned and your spirit is behind your mission, you stop chasing results and start attracting them. And that leads us right into one of the most mysterious, most debated parts of Hill's worldview, Hill's view on infinite intelligence. Hill's view on infinite intelligence. This is where Napoleon Hill gets really misunderstood. See, when most people hear him mention infinite intelligence, they brush it off as poetic language, a nice phrase to sound deep, something spiritual-ish. But for Hill, it wasn't just a metaphor. It was the core source behind every success principle he ever taught, and he treated it like a real force, a living, thinking presence, a kind of universal consciousness you could actually tap into, deliberately, for ideas, guidance, inspiration, and power, not just once in a while, but consistently, strategically. Let's break this down. First, what is infinite intelligence? According to Hill, he doesn't give you a clean, tight definition. That's the first thing to understand. He wasn't trying to create a religion or a science. He was trying to describe an experience, one that defies easy explanation. But based on his writings, here's what we know. Infinite intelligence is the source of all knowledge, the root of all creative ideas, the medium through which intuition and hunches arise, a field of energy that responds to human thought, a force that's always accessible, but only to those who are mentally prepared. Sound abstract. It is, but Hill was practical with it. He didn't want you to just believe in infinite intelligence. He wanted you to build a relationship with it. So how do you do that? Hill gave a few key entry points: stillness and receptivity. You can't access infinite intelligence when your mind is loud, anxious, or reactive. You have to calm the noise. You have to get still. Think of it like tuning into a radio frequency. Static drowns out the signal. Faith and belief. This one's non-negotiable. Hill insisted that you must believe it exists in order to receive anything from it. Not passively, actively. Like tuning your whole being to trust it's real and available. Definiteness of purpose. Infinite intelligence doesn't respond to vague wishes. It responds to clear direction. When your desires are strong and specific, when your mind is fully focused on an outcome, you become a kind of magnet. Emotion and repetition. He taught that thoughts charged with emotion travel faster. When you mix intense feeling with clear thought, you send a stronger signal into this field. Action. This is where people mess up. They think they can sit still and wait for the universe to deliver. But Hill believed infinite intelligence responds to those in motion. It guides those who are already stepping forward, not those who are sitting back. Let's take a real-life example. One Hill referenced over and over: Thomas Edison. Edison famously said he never invented the light bulb. He discovered it. The idea already existed in some form. He just tuned into it. Hill believed this tuning wasn't luck. It was Edison's ability to stay locked in, mentally open, and spiritually aligned for long periods of time. He called it tapping into infinite intelligence. Not copying, not calculating, but receiving. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Hill believed the subconscious mind was the bridge. He said that infinite intelligence doesn't speak to your conscious, thinking brain directly. Instead, it communicates through subtle nudges, gut instincts, dreams, random ideas that flash in at the perfect moment, feelings that won't go away. And the only way to catch those signals, you have to train your subconscious. That's why he was obsessed with autosuggestion, visualization, affirmations, and repetition. He wasn't trying to hypnotize you into confidence. He was trying to prime your subconscious so it could pick up transmissions from a higher intelligence. That's a bold claim, especially in 1937. But here's what's wild. Modern neuroscience is catching up to some of this. Today, researchers talk about the default mode network, the part of the brain that lights up when you're not focused on anything, when you're daydreaming, reflecting, or just being. And it turns out that's when your most creative, intuitive thoughts show up. Hill was saying the same thing long before fMRI scans existed. But here's the catch: Hill also warned about using this force irresponsibly. He said infinite intelligence isn't just a wish machine. It's not there to feed your ego. It's a power that works best when you approach it with humility, service, and purpose. He wrote, "Infinite intelligence will not build plans for a person who offers no definite end in view. You might as well expect a boat to reach a port without a rudder as to expect success without a definite aim. So this isn't magic, it's a partnership. You bring focus, desire, emotion, faith, and action. Infinite intelligence brings the breakthroughs, the timing, the synchronicity, the shortcuts you could never have mapped yourself. But you have to earn it. Through mindset, through alignment, through commitment." So what's the big takeaway here? Napoleon Hill's greatest idea wasn't just think and grow rich. It was, you are not alone in this. You are not the source of every idea. You don't have to force every outcome. You're allowed to tap into something bigger, something smarter, faster, and more connected than you could ever be on your own. But you can only access it when your mind and spirit are aligned. And when they are, you'll start noticing things. Ideas come easier. Solutions pop up out of nowhere. People show up at the right moment, and paths appear where there were none before, not because you're lucky, but because you're finally in tune with something timeless, something real, something Hill spent his entire life trying to understand, and something we're about to go even deeper into now as we explore mental magnetism and vibration. Mental magnetism and vibration. All right, this is where things get pretty interesting. If you've been following along, by now you understand that Napoleon Hill was all about harnessing mental power. But now we dive into something even more profound: the concept of mental magnetism and the role of vibration in shaping your reality. What does that even mean, right? Hill was ahead of his time in connecting the idea of the human mind to energy, something we now have a better understanding of, thanks to modern science. But Hill's teachings were based on this simple yet powerful truth: your mind is a magnet, and your thoughts carry vibrations that attract similar energies from the universe. It's like when you hear someone say, "He just vibes differently." But what Hill was suggesting is that you can directly influence the quality of your own vibrations, which then influence the experiences you attract. So, what is mental magnetism? To Hill, mental magnetism wasn't just about having a magnetic personality. In the conventional sense, it was more like an invisible force that you radiate based on your thoughts, emotions, and intentions. Think of it as the energy you project to the world, whether you're aware of it or not. If you walk into a room and there's someone who immediately grabs your attention, not because of their appearance, but because of their aura, their presence, their energy, that's mental magnetism. It's the magnetic quality of their mind. It's the energy they emit. And that energy, it can attract opportunities, people, resources, or repel them, depending on its nature. Hill describes mental magnetism as a force that can either pull you closer to success or push you farther from it. It's all about what you're mentally and emotionally tuned into. How does this work? Let's break it down. Vibration is the key. Hill consistently linked thoughts to vibrations. When you have a thought, it sends out a vibrational frequency. You're basically emitting waves of energy into the universe. And these waves are not neutral. They either attract or repel the circumstances, people, and events that align with them. Everything in the universe, from the chair you're sitting on, to the car you drive, to the people around you, is made up of vibrations. Atoms are constantly in motion. Everything is a form of energy vibrating at different frequencies. This idea of vibration is crucial to Hill's philosophy. He argues that when you change the vibration of your thoughts, you change the energy field around you, which in turn starts attracting things that match that frequency. The law of attraction. You've probably heard of the law of attraction before. It's all about how like attracts like. Hill, in his teachings, wasn't exactly the one to coin this term, but he was definitely the one laying the groundwork for it. What he was getting at is that you are constantly attracting experiences and people based on the vibrations you emit. If you're filled with negative thoughts, worry, doubt, anger, those energies will attract more of the same. On the other hand, if you focus on positive, uplifting thoughts, love, gratitude, ambition, you will attract positive circumstances into your life. It's not magic, it's energy. For Hill, the key was becoming aware of what kind of vibrations you are sending out into the world. If you want to attract wealth, success, or opportunities, you need to align your vibration with those things. That doesn't mean just thinking happy thoughts. It means having deep emotional alignment with your desires and focusing on them consistently. The importance of emotional control. Here's where it gets deeper. You can't control the world around you all the time, but what you can control are your emotions. Hill said that emotions are a magnifying force for your thoughts. Positive emotions amplify good vibrations. Negative emotions amplify bad vibrations. Think of it like this: when you're frustrated or scared, your mind is broadcasting a signal of fear and uncertainty. That's a low-frequency vibration, and as a result, you attract more fear and uncertainty. But when you're feeling confident, enthusiastic, and on purpose, that's a high-frequency vibration. And this pulls in more confidence, more momentum, and more opportunities. So, how do you raise your vibrations to attract what you want? Hill gave us several tools to work with, tools that we've discussed before, but now they make even more sense: definiteness of purpose. When you're clear about what you want, it sends out a more powerful, focused vibration. You're not scattered or uncertain, and that concentrated energy pulls things toward you. Positive mental attitude. Cultivating a mindset that's focused on possibilities, not problems, will directly increase the frequency of your vibrations. Visualization and affirmation. These are tools you can use to align your mental energy. When you picture yourself succeeding or affirm that you are worthy of success, you're tuning your mind to that outcome. Emotionally charged thoughts. Emotions are the fuel that powers thoughts. If you're trying to create wealth, visualize not just the thing you want, but how it feels. The stronger the emotion tied to the thought, the more magnetic it becomes. Mental magnetism in action. A real-world example. Think about this: Steve Jobs. He had this magnetic presence, right? Not because he was always charismatic in a traditional sense, but because of his ability to embody the future he wanted to create. When he spoke about Apple's vision, his belief, his commitment, his energy, it pulled people in. But here's the thing: Jobs wasn't just talking the talk. He was vibrating at a frequency that matched the future of technology. And that's what made people follow him. It wasn't just his idea of innovation, it was his unwavering belief in it, his energy around it. And that's how mental magnetism works. It's not just about what you say or what you want. It's about the energy behind it, the invisible force you project that draws others to you. Final thoughts on mental magnetism and vibration. In summary, Hill's view on mental magnetism isn't about surface-level charm or fake positivity. It's about tuning into the natural frequencies of success and aligning your energy with them. Your thoughts are not just passing through your mind. They are broadcasting into the universe. And the kind of energy you broadcast is exactly what you'll get back. This is why Hill was adamant about the importance of controlling your mind, cultivating a positive attitude, and using the power of emotion to fuel your thoughts. You're not just trying to change your mindset, you're altering the very vibrations you're sending out into the world. And that's the magnetic power of your mind, the power of repetition and habit. When Napoleon Hill talks about success, one of the core principles he keeps circling back to is habit. It's not flashy, it's not glamorous, but it is the bedrock of everything you do. Whether you realize it or not, your habits are the invisible force behind your results. Here's the thing. Hill argues that we're not the sum of our isolated moments. We're the sum of our repeated actions, the thoughts we repeat, the decisions we make every day, the little actions we take over and over. If you've ever heard the phrase, success is a habit, this is what Hill meant. Success isn't about a single breakthrough or a one-time effort. It's about your daily rhythm, the things you repeatedly focus on, work on, and refine. The importance of repetition for Hill, repetition was everything. It wasn't enough to learn something once or try something once. The key to success is constant repetition, reinforcing the beliefs, behaviors, and thoughts that align with your goal. Why? Because the mind, as Hill points out, is like clay. It's moldable. It can be shaped by the repeated thoughts you expose it to. So if you repeatedly think of success, wealth, and abundance, your mind starts to accept that reality as truth. But the opposite is also true. If you constantly dwell on fear, doubt, and negativity, your mind will accept that as your reality too. And this is where habit comes in. Hill emphasizes that habit is the key to success, because good habits lead to good results. But here's the kicker: habits are built through repetition. It's the constant, daily reinforcement of thoughts, actions, and routines that shape who you become. How repetition creates results. If you want to change your life, Hill suggests that you have to change your habits. And how do you change habits? Through repetition. Let's say you want to get better at something, whether it's writing, fitness, or building a business. You could have the knowledge, you could have the desire, but it's only when you show up every single day that those things really start to compound. Take the example of learning to play an instrument. You could be incredibly gifted, but if you don't practice daily, you'll never reach your full potential. It's the act of showing up and repeating the same motions over and over that leads to mastery. The same applies to any skill or success principle. Repetition turns actions into habits, and habits define results. Hill also talks about the fact that your subconscious mind learns through repetition. Whatever you repeatedly expose yourself to, whether it's positive or negative, your subconscious starts to accept it as truth. So, when you repeat positive affirmations or visualize your goals over and over, you're training your subconscious to believe in that future, and it starts working in the background to bring it to life. The more you repeat those actions, the deeper the connection becomes. Over time, those thoughts and beliefs become automatic, creating positive habits. If repetition is the key to changing your reality, the next logical question is, how do you repeat the right things? How do you build positive habits instead of destructive ones? Hill lays out a few principles that help with this. Define your goal clearly. Hill argues that success is impossible without a clear aim. You have to know exactly what you want before you can make it a habit. You don't just wake up and say, I want to be successful. You say, I want to be successful by building $1 million business. Or, I want to be successful by writing a book. Your goal needs to be specific enough that you can break it down into smaller, actionable tasks. And when you know exactly what you're aiming for, you can begin to repeatedly focus on that goal. Build daily routines. Hill wasn't a fan of random action. He believed that success comes from creating daily habits that are aligned with your goals. It's like building muscle. You don't just hit the gym once and expect to be fit. It's the consistent, daily effort that leads to results. If your goal is to build wealth, that means creating daily habits that bring you closer to that wealth. Whether that's reading books, working on your business, managing your finances, every day needs to bring you closer to the end result. Focus on one thing at a time. One of the most powerful insights Hill offers is that multitasking doesn't work. If you're trying to do everything at once, you're not able to give your full focus to any one thing. Success comes from concentration, and concentration comes from building habits that support your goal. When you repeat the same positive actions every day, you're building muscle in the area of focus and clarity. You're reinforcing what you want, not what you don't want. Overcoming negative habits, building positive habits is powerful. But what about the bad habits? The habits that hold you back? We all have them. And Hill doesn't shy away from this fact. He doesn't tell you to ignore the bad habits. He says you need to replace them. Let's say you struggle with procrastination. You want to work on your goals, but you keep finding ways to avoid them. Hill's advice here is simple: replace procrastination with action. Start by taking small steps every day, even if it's just a 10-minute action. The more you repeat those positive actions, the easier they become. It's not about beating yourself up for the bad habits. It's about redirecting the repetition toward positive habits. And here's a key part of that process: discipline. Hill wasn't soft on this. He believed that self-discipline is what separates the successful from the unsuccessful. It's the ability to repeat positive behaviors even when you don't feel like it. Repetition as a success principle. Repetition isn't just about doing the same thing over and over. It's about reinforcing a mindset of success. It's about being consistent and persistent, even when the results aren't immediate. This is why Hill constantly stresses that success is a process, not a quick fix. The more you repeat your habits, the more your subconscious aligns with your goals. Eventually, these habits become second nature, and you begin to operate on a higher frequency. The power of repetition is in the compounding effect. Small, consistent actions add up over time, and the results are inevitable. Final thoughts on the power of repetition and habit in the end. What Hill is telling us is this: success is not an event. It's a habit. And like any habit, it's something that requires repetition, daily actions, small victories, consistent focus. The more you repeat the right thoughts, actions, and behaviors, the more you align with success. You can't control every variable in your life, but you can control your habits. And if you control your habits, you're essentially controlling your future. So, the question is, what are you repeating today? The answer to that question will determine the direction of your life. The role of fear in blocking success. Fear. It's something that we all experience at some point. We fear failure, rejection, uncertainty, and the unknown. And while it's natural to feel fear, Hill warns us that fear can be one of the greatest barriers to success. In fact, he argues that fear is often the primary force that keeps us from achieving our goals, whether we're aware of it or not. So, what exactly does Hill say about fear, and how does it block success? Fear as the invisible enemy. Fear doesn't just keep us from taking action. It can paralyze us. It takes over our thoughts, steers our decisions, and limits what we believe is possible for ourselves. Hill explains that fear is a learned response. It doesn't exist as an inherent part of our nature. It's something we acquire through our experiences, our upbringing, and society's influences. And here's the kicker: fear often distorts reality. It makes things seem much worse than they really are, clouding our judgment and keeping us stuck in a state of indecision. At its core, Fear is the mind's way of trying to protect us, but in the process, it blocks our potential. Instead of acting and moving forward, we're left dwelling in uncertainty, crippled by the worst-case scenarios we've imagined. But fear doesn't just stop at indecision. It has the power to influence our habits in a way that limits our progress. Hill made it clear that if we allow fear to control us, we will be repeatedly drawn toward failure. Because we're essentially conditioned to avoid risk, discomfort, and uncertainty. The 6 basic fears. One of Hill's major contributions to the understanding of fear is his breakdown of the 6 basic fears that hold people back. These fears, according to Hill, are the root cause of most failures in life. They affect almost everyone to some degree, and they often show up in subtle ways. Let's take a quick look at these 6 fears. The fear of poverty. This is the fear that you won't have enough, that you'll fail financially or lose everything you've worked for. It's a fear that causes people to avoid taking risks or pursuing big opportunities because they're afraid of losing what little they have. The fear of criticism. A fear of being judged, ridiculed, or rejected. This often holds people back from sharing their ideas, starting a business, or speaking up because they're worried about what others will think. The fear of ill health. This fear keeps people stuck in unhealthy habits, afraid to take action because they fear that doing so might lead to illness or injury. It leads to a cycle of inactivity and self-sabotage. The fear of loss of love. The fear that we won't be loved or accepted if we fail, succeed too much, or change in any way. This fear leads to people staying in relationships or situations that are unfulfilling because they're afraid of being alone or unloved. The fear of old age. A fear of getting older and not achieving our goals or dreams. This fear often causes people to give up too soon or not even try because they feel it's too late. The fear of death. The ultimate fear, which Hill suggests is often tied to all the others. People are afraid of the unknown, of what comes after life, and this fear stops them from living fully and pursuing their goals. How fear blocks success. Now that we know the types of fears Hill identified, let's look at how these fears actually block success. Fear limits your potential. The first and most obvious way fear holds you back is by limiting your potential. It makes you believe you're not capable, not worthy, or not good enough. It gets in the way of your ambitions, steering you away from opportunities and leaving you in your comfort zone. When fear takes over, you stop taking the necessary steps toward your goals. You freeze. You avoid risk. You let opportunities pass by because you're afraid of failure. And in doing so, you remain exactly where you are, stuck. Hill reminds us that in order to achieve anything significant, we must face fear head on and not let it control us. It's about acting in spite of fear, not because it's gone. Fear doesn't disappear, but your response to it can change. Fear triggers procrastination. Fear often triggers procrastination. It's a defense mechanism. The more you fear something, the more you avoid it. For example, you might want to start a business but feel afraid of failure, so you procrastinate. You put it off, telling yourself, maybe next week, or I'll figure it out later. But that later never comes because fear is keeping you stuck in the present, paralyzing your ability to take action. And the longer you procrastinate, the more ingrained this pattern becomes. The fear grows, and so does your avoidance. Hill teaches us that the key to overcoming procrastination is taking immediate action, no matter how small. The more you take action, the more you train your mind to overcome fear. Fear breeds self-doubt. Fear creates a cycle of self-doubt. You start doubting your abilities, your worthiness, and your right to success. This self-doubt feeds into the fear, and the cycle continues. The more you doubt yourself, the less likely you are to take bold steps toward your goals. Hill urges us to replace self-doubt with self-confidence. The more confident you are in your abilities, the less power fear has over you. Confidence doesn't mean you're fearless. It means you're willing to act even when you feel afraid. How to overcome fear and break free. Hill suggests that overcoming fear is not an instant fix, but rather a process. Here's how you can begin to break free from fear and move toward success. Acknowledge your fear. The first step in overcoming fear is recognizing it for what it is, a natural, but often irrational emotion. By acknowledging fear, you take away its power. Shift your focus. Rather than focusing on the fear, shift your focus to what you want to achieve. Think about the rewards that lie on the other side of fear. Focus on your end goal, not on the obstacles. Take small steps. You don't have to face your biggest fear all at once. Start with small steps that gradually push you out of your comfort zone. Each time you face fear, you build confidence and reduce its grip on you. Develop a positive mental attitude. Hill firmly believed that your attitude toward fear determines whether it controls you or not. Cultivate a positive mental attitude by focusing on the possibilities, not the limitations. Fear is inevitable, but the key to success lies in how we deal with it. Hill's philosophy is clear: don't let fear control you. Don't let it dictate your decisions, actions, or your future. When you face fear and push through it, you become stronger, more resilient, and more capable of achieving your dreams. Remember, fear is not the enemy. It's the belief in fear that holds you back. When you learn to face it and take consistent action despite it, you unlock your true potential. The 6 basic fears explained. Napoleon Hill's philosophy doesn't just focus on the positive aspects of success. He also brings attention to the powerful forces that prevent us from achieving greatness. Specifically, fear. Hill identifies 6 basic fears that he believes are the primary roadblocks in the pursuit of success. These fears, often subconscious, create mental barriers that keep us from taking the necessary actions to achieve our goals. Let's dive into each of these 6 fears and explore how they hold us back. 1. The fear of poverty. The fear of poverty is the fear of not having enough, whether it's money, resources, or security. This fear causes people to stay stuck in a mindset of scarcity. They become obsessed with avoiding financial loss, which makes them hesitant to take risks or pursue their dreams. Ironically, this very fear often creates the poverty it seeks to avoid, as it leads to playing it safe rather than taking bold actions. Hill argues that we need to shift our focus from fear to opportunity. Focusing on abundance and adopting a growth mindset will naturally lead to financial prosperity. 2. The fear of criticism. This fear is one that holds many back from reaching their potential. The fear of being criticized, judged, or rejected by others prevents people from taking action, speaking up, or following through on their ideas. People paralyzed by this fear often suppress their true selves in order to gain approval. Hill reminds us that criticism is inevitable. If you're doing something of value, you will be criticized. Instead of letting it derail you, embrace it as a sign of success. True growth comes from facing criticism head-on and continuing to move forward regardless. 3. The fear of ill health. The fear of ill health keeps people from living fully. This fear often results in excessive worry about one's health, which can lead to anxiety and avoidance of physical activities. People become obsessed with staying healthy to the point that they let it dominate their decisions. Hill teaches us that health is a reflection of our mental state. Instead of fearing illness, we should focus on cultivating a positive attitude and engaging in habits that promote well-being, like exercise, nutrition, and stress management. 4. The fear of loss of love. The fear of losing love is tied to our relationships. It's the fear that we won't be loved or accepted if we fail, change, or become successful. People who fear this often sacrifice their desires and act in ways that are more likely to gain others' approval than to follow their authentic path. Hill stresses that true love is about supporting each other's dreams, not holding one another back. The key to overcoming this fear is to develop self-love and confidence in your worth. When you value yourself, you attract the right kind of people who will support you in your growth. 5. The fear of old age. The fear of old age stems from the idea that it's too late to pursue dreams. As we age, there's a tendency to think that time has run out, that our chance for success has passed. This fear causes people to become complacent and abandon their aspirations. Hill encourages us to reframe our thinking. Age is just a number. Many successful people didn't achieve their greatest accomplishments until later in life. The key is to remain active, curious, and committed to personal growth, regardless of your age. 6. The fear of death. The final fear Hill discusses is the fear of death. This fear is the ultimate uncertainty and often prevents people from taking risks or fully embracing life. It can paralyze us, leading to inaction, and keeps us stuck in a state of constant worry. Hill suggests that fear of death shouldn't stop us from living. Instead of focusing on the unknown, we should focus on living fully in the present and taking action now. Life is short, and the best way to honor it is to live with purpose and passion. These 6 fears, poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death, have the power to hold us back from achieving success and reaching our full potential. But Hill teaches us that the way to overcome them is by facing them directly. Fear may never fully disappear, but we can control how it influences us. By acknowledging these fears, challenging them, and taking consistent action, we can break through the barriers they create. The more we confront fear, the stronger we become in overcoming it, and the closer we get to the success we desire. The use of emotion to fuel thought. In Napoleon Hill's philosophy, one of the most powerful forces driving human behavior is emotion. Hill emphasizes that emotions are not just fleeting feelings, but are immensely powerful forces that influence our thoughts, decisions, and ultimately, our actions. If you can understand how to channel emotion correctly, it can act as the fuel that propels you toward your goals. But how does emotion actually work in Hill's philosophy? Let's break it down. Emotions as a power source. Hill explains that thoughts are the foundation of everything we achieve or fail to achieve. But thoughts alone aren't enough. They need energy to drive them, and emotion provides that energy. According to Hill, emotions are a form of energy that can either amplify or block the power of your thoughts. This is why positive emotions like desire, faith, and enthusiasm can be so powerful when it comes to success. Hill is very clear that you cannot just think your way into success. To make your thoughts more than just passing ideas, you must inject emotion into them. In other words, emotion acts as the fuel that brings thought into action. The emotional power of desire. Hill's principle of desires, which we discussed earlier, is the starting point of all achievement. But desire, in its purest form, is not just a thought, it's a deeply felt emotion. Desire without emotion is weak and fleeting. But when you have an emotional connection to your desire, when it makes you feel passionate, excited, or driven, it becomes a force to be reckoned with. Think about something you truly want. Perhaps it's a career goal, a personal achievement, or something you've been dreaming about for a long time. If you're emotionally connected to this goal, you feel it in your bones. That emotional connection makes you work harder, think smarter, and push through obstacles that might otherwise stop you. Hill encourages you to feed your desire with emotion and see it transform from a simple thought into a powerful, actionable goal. The more intense your emotional connection to your desire, the more unstoppable you become in your pursuit of it. Faith and the power of belief. Hill also explains that faith is a critical component in fueling success, and faith is deeply tied to emotion. Faith is not just about hoping things will work out, It's about believing in the outcome with intense emotional commitment. The key idea here is that you need to believe in your ability to succeed before it becomes reality. This belief, powered by emotion, helps you push forward even when things seem impossible. Hill insists that faith is not a passive belief. It's a dynamic, emotional commitment to seeing your desires come true, no matter what. Without emotion backing your faith, your belief is weak and lacks the force necessary to push you through challenges. Faith with emotion is what makes things happen. It transforms thought into reality. The role of autosuggestion in emotional influence. One of Hill's favorite techniques for emotional mastery is autosuggestion, which is essentially using positive affirmations or self-talk to influence your subconscious mind. Hill emphasizes that repetition and emotional intensity are key when it comes to autosuggestion. When you repeatedly tell yourself something and back it up with emotion, your subconscious mind starts to believe it. For instance, if you repeat to yourself, "I am successful, I am successful," but you say it with a deep emotional conviction, it carries a much more powerful message than just saying it out of habit or because you feel you should. Hill writes, "The emotions of faith, love, and sex are the most powerful emotions known to man. When they are blended with thoughts, they can bring any desire into physical reality. Who emotions that can block success, of course. Not all emotions are positive, and Hill acknowledges that negative emotions can block success. Emotions like fear, doubt, anger, and resentment can consume us and divert our focus away from our goals. These emotions do the opposite of what positive emotions do. They drain your energy and prevent you from acting decisively." One of Hill's critical points is that if you want to be successful, you need to eliminate negative emotions and focus on positive emotional states. This doesn't mean ignoring your feelings, but rather learning how to redirect them toward constructive actions. Practical ways to harness emotion. Now that we understand the role of emotion in fueling thought, how do we practically harness this power to drive our success? Hill suggests a few practical ways. Visualize with emotion. Take a few moments each day to vividly imagine your goals as already accomplished. Picture them in as much detail as possible, and feel the emotions associated with achieving them, whether it's excitement, gratitude, or pride. Emotional reaffirmation. Combine affirmations with emotional energy. Don't just repeat, "I will be successful." Say it with emotion, as though you've already achieved it. Imagine the joy and satisfaction that would come with that success. Surround yourself with positive emotions. The people and environments you interact with impact your emotional state. Surround yourself with individuals who uplift you and create an environment that inspires positive feelings. This can fuel your emotional drive to take action. Emotion, in Hill's philosophy, is not just a byproduct of success. It's a vital driving force that transforms thought into action. When you learn to channel your emotions effectively, especially emotions like desire, faith, and enthusiasm, you create a powerful force that can overcome obstacles, challenge doubts, and propel you toward your goals. So, as you pursue your dreams, remember that your emotions are your greatest allies. Feed them with positivity, belief, and vision, and watch them work for you, pushing you toward unimaginable success. The law of cosmic habit force. Napoleon Hill's law of cosmic habit force is a powerful concept that highlights how universal habits shape our destiny. Hill asserts that habit is a cosmic law, not just a personal or individual occurrence. He explains that our habits are governed by a larger force in the universe, and the more we repeat something, the stronger that behavior becomes, leading to either positive or negative outcomes in our lives. So, what exactly is the law of cosmic habit force? What is the law of cosmic habit force? The law of cosmic habit force suggests that the universe operates in patterns, much like how natural forces work in cycles, such as the rotation of the Earth or the changing seasons. Hill argues that habit is a universal force that impacts everything, not just individual humans. Our thoughts, actions, and behaviors are shaped by this larger cosmic law, and the more we repeat a behavior, the more ingrained it becomes. Hill points out that our subconscious minds are programmed by our habits, and these subconscious patterns become automatic the more we repeat them. The law of cosmic habit force asserts that our success or failure largely depends on the types of habits we cultivate over time. Good habits attract positive results, while bad habits lead to negative consequences. The role of repetition, the key to understanding the law of cosmic habit force, is the principle of repetition. Hill explains that repetition is the foundation of all habits. Whether you are trying to achieve success, build wealth, or change your life, repeated actions are the driving force behind everything. When you consistently repeat a behavior, your mind and body become conditioned to that action. This can be positive I, like exercising daily or developing a growth mindset, or negative ah, like procrastinating or doubting yourself. Hill's message is clear: if you want to change your life, you need to change your repeated actions. By understanding this, you begin to realize that habits are not just random occurrences. They are forces that grow stronger with each repetition and are powerful enough to shape your future. Harnessing the law for success. Hill encourages us to take advantage of this law by consciously choosing habits that align with our goals. He argues that if you deliberately repeat positive thoughts and actions, such as persistence, planning, and self-confidence, you will eventually train your subconscious mind to automatically support those behaviors. For example, successful people don't become successful overnight. They have simply mastered the habit of persistence, which, when repeated over time, leads to success. The same applies to any goal, whether financial, personal, or professional. By committing to repeated actions that are in line with your desires, you can tap into the cosmic power of habit to help you achieve them. Breaking negative habits. The law of cosmic habit force works in both positive and negative directions. Hill warns that bad habits, such as fear, procrastination, and doubt, also become stronger the more you repeat them. If you constantly entertain negative thoughts, they will gain power and start controlling your actions. However, Hill also offers a solution: replace bad habits with good ones. By consciously shifting your focus and repeating positive behaviors, you can override negative patterns. For instance, if you're struggling with self-doubt, you can use affirmations and repetition to build self-confidence. Just as bad habits grow stronger through repetition, good habits can do the same. The law of cosmic habit force is one of the most powerful forces in shaping your destiny. Your habits are not just a reflection of your daily actions, but a direct manifestation of a universal law. The more you repeat a behavior or thought, the stronger it becomes, and eventually, it will shape the reality of your life. Hill's advice is clear: be conscious of your habits. Whether you want to succeed or fail, the law of cosmic habit force will work in your favor or against you, depending on the habits you cultivate. So, if you want to change your future, begin by changing your daily habits and repeating the actions that lead to success. In the next section, we'll explore the fascinating concept of mental magnetism and how it plays into the success equation. Hill's teachings versus traditional philosophy. Napoleon Hill's teachings, especially those in his landmark book Think and Grow Rich, stand out for their practical and goal-oriented approach to success. While Hill certainly draws inspiration from philosophy, his focus is on the practical application of success principles rather than abstract philosophical questions. This stands in stark contrast to traditional philosophy, which tends to focus on broader, often more theoretical issues about life, existence, and ethics. Practicality versus theory. One of the biggest distinctions between Hill's teachings and traditional philosophy is their focus. Hill's philosophy is heavily rooted in action. He teaches individuals to adopt specific, repeatable habits that will lead to success. Whether it's developing a burning desire for success or consistently practicing auto-suggestion, his methods are all about doing. For Hill, success doesn't come from simply thinking or contemplating. It comes from applying these principles daily. In contrast, traditional philosophy, particularly in the Western tradition, is often concerned with abstract concepts. Philosophers like Plato or Aristotle didn't necessarily provide a step-by-step guide to achieving success. Instead, they explored ideas about justice, ethics, virtue, and the nature of the soul. While these ideas are undoubtedly valuable, they're more focused on intellectual reflection rather than practical outcomes. Personal responsibility versus external forces. Another key difference between Hill's teachings and traditional philosophy lies in how they approach personal responsibility. Hill firmly believes that each individual has the power to shape their own destiny through focused thoughts, emotions, and actions. His emphasis on belief, faith, and mindset centers on the idea that we are in control of our lives, and success is a direct result of our actions. Traditional philosophy, particularly schools like Stoicism or Existentialism, tends to focus more on acceptance of life's uncertainties. Stoics like Epictetus taught that we should focus only on things within our control, while existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre focused on the responsibility of creating meaning in an otherwise meaningless world. While Hill also stresses responsibility, his approach leans more toward active creation of success, whereas traditional philosophy often emphasizes acceptance of things outside one's control. The role of emotion. Hill's teachings stand apart from traditional philosophy in how they embrace the power of emotion. For Hill, emotions like desire, faith, and enthusiasm are crucial to achieving success. He argues that positive emotions, when channeled correctly, are a driving force that can help manifest our goals. Hill believes that emotion is energy, the fuel that powers our actions, thoughts, and behaviors toward success. Traditional philosophy, especially in the rationalist tradition, often argues that reason should control emotions. Thinkers like René Descartes and Immanuel Kant emphasized the importance of reason and self-control, viewing emotions as something that could cloud judgment and lead to irrational behavior. Hill's view, on the other hand, is more emotion-driven. He believes that you must harness and direct your emotions to build the life you desire. Spirituality and infinite intelligence. Hill's teachings also introduce the concept of infinite intelligence, a higher universal force that, according to him, can guide you toward success if you align yourself with it. This concept suggests that there is a spiritual or universal energy that can help you achieve your goals if you tap into it through faith, visualization, and the mastermind principle. In traditional philosophy, spirituality is approached in varied ways. Eastern philosophies like Buddhism and Hinduism emphasize spiritual practices and achieving enlightenment, while Western philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche focus on the individual's will to power and reject the existence of a higher power. Hill's spiritual perspective, in contrast, offers a more direct connection between spirituality and material success, encouraging individuals to tap into this force for practical benefit. In summary, Hill's teachings focus on the practical, actionable steps toward success, emphasizing the role of emotion, belief, and habit. His philosophy encourages individuals to take responsibility for their success and actively work toward achieving their goals. On the other hand, traditional philosophy often delves into deeper, theoretical matters, questioning the nature of existence, ethics, and the meaning of life, often without offering specific paths to success. While both Hill's teachings and traditional philosophy offer profound insights into the human condition, Hill's approach is more direct and goal-oriented, focusing on practical tools for personal success. Traditional philosophy offers rich intellectual exploration, but is often less concerned with providing immediate solutions to life's challenges. Comparison with Stoicism and Idealism. One of the most prominent differences between Hill's teachings and Stoic philosophy is the way they handle life's challenges and the pursuit of success. Stoicism, founded by philosophers like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, focuses on the idea of accepting what is beyond our control and cultivating virtue as the highest good. For Stoics, the key to a fulfilling life is to focus on internal peace, control one's emotions, and accept the external world as it is. Hill, on the other hand, believes in actively shaping one's destiny. In his philosophy, personal achievement is within reach for anyone who desires it and is willing to take focused action. Hill emphasizes the importance of having a clear goal, persistent effort, and a positive mindset. In this sense, his teachings are much more goal-oriented and focused on taking practical steps toward success. Hill does not suggest simply accepting failure or external circumstances as the Stoics might. Instead, he encourages individuals to take ownership of their future by acting with purpose. For example, while a Stoic might recommend accepting hardships with grace and focusing on internal growth, Hill would advise leveraging the power of belief, desire, and organized planning to change external circumstances. Hill's approach is active, focusing on manifesting success through repetition of habits, persistence, and utilizing the mind's power. Stoicism, however, would advocate for inner peace and the acceptance of hardship as a means to transcend suffering. Idealism and Hill's focus on the concrete. Idealism, particularly as discussed by philosophers like Plato and Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, posits that reality is fundamentally shaped by ideas, consciousness, or mind. Idealism suggests that the material world is not as important as the world of ideas, and human perception is the means through which we understand and interact with reality. Hill's teachings intersect with idealism in the sense that he emphasizes the power of the mind and thoughts in shaping one's destiny. In fact, Hill stresses that thoughts are things. They are the foundation for all tangible outcomes. His famous quote, "What the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve," resonates with idealist philosophy in that it suggests our internal ideas directly impact the material world. However, Hill's approach is more pragmatic than that of idealism. While idealism may lean heavily on abstract concepts and the development of one's ideas in a philosophical sense, Hill focuses on practical outcomes. For Hill, it's not just about having ideal thoughts or concepts, it's about taking action and using your mental power to create concrete results. This is why Hill emphasizes concepts like organized planning, faith, and autosuggestion, tools for converting mental energy into real-world success. The role of emotion. Stoicism vs. Hill's passion. Another point of divergence lies in the role of emotion in success. Stoicism teaches that emotions, especially negative ones, are distractions that must be controlled or eliminated. Stoic philosophers believe that rationality should govern actions and decisions, and they suggest detaching oneself from desires and feelings to avoid suffering. Hill, however, places great importance on emotion as a driving force behind achievement. He argues that passion, desire, and enthusiasm are essential for creating momentum toward success. In Hill's view, emotions are the fuel for action. They propel us toward our goals. The desire to succeed and the faith that we can achieve our desires are central to his teachings, and these emotions, when harnessed, create a powerful force that can change the course of our lives. For example, Hill would encourage individuals to feel the desire for wealth or success intensely, while a Stoic would advise against getting emotionally attached to those desires in the first place. Hill's view is that strong emotions, when channeled properly, create positive mental states that drive people to take action and realize their potential. While there are some overlapping elements between Hill's teachings, Stoicism, and Idealism, the practicality of Hill's approach sets him apart from these traditional philosophical systems. Hill's philosophy is deeply focused on action, goal setting, and the empowerment of the individual to shape their reality. Stoicism, on the other hand, emphasizes acceptance and inner peace as paths to fulfillment, while idealism focuses more on the abstract and intellectual aspects of how reality is shaped by mind and thought. Ultimately, Hill's teachings provide a direct path to success through the application of mental principles and repeated actions, while Stoicism and Idealism offer broader philosophical reflections that help individuals navigate life's challenges and better understand the world around them. Hill's philosophy encourages individuals to take control of their destiny, combining the power of mind with focused effort to achieve their goals. While Stoicism and Idealism may offer valuable insights into human existence, Hill's teachings focus on practical tools for achieving success in the material world. Did Hill believe in determinism or free will? And now, let's dive into a question that can often spark debate. Did Napoleon Hill believe in determinism or free will? To understand Hill's perspective, we first need to get clear on what these two concepts are. Determinism is the idea that everything that happens, including human actions, is determined by external factors, that our choices are influenced or even caused by things outside of our control, like genetics, upbringing, or environment. On the flip side, free will is the belief that we have the ability to make choices independently of outside influences, and our decisions shape our destiny. So, where did Hill stand on this spectrum? The answer is pretty straightforward, but it might surprise you. Hill didn't strictly fall into either category. He believed that we have the power of free will, but our outcomes are heavily influenced by certain laws and principles that govern our success. Free will, the power of choice. Hill was a strong believer in the idea of free will. One of his most consistent themes throughout Think and Grow Rich is the power of choice. According to Hill, the most important thing in life is the ability to decide, not just what you want, but how you will respond to life's circumstances. He argues that our thoughts are our own, and that we have the ability to choose them. This is most clearly shown in his teachings about desire and faith. Hill believed that if you truly desired something and had the will to succeed, nothing could stop you. It wasn't about being born into the right circumstances or having the perfect conditions. It was about making a conscious decision to believe in yourself, to take action, and to keep going. For Hill, this belief in free will was central to success. He put the responsibility for our results squarely on our shoulders. It's about making the choice to persist, to keep learning, and to take action toward your goals, no matter what challenges come your way. Essentially, Hill said, if you decide to succeed, then you will. Determinism, external forces at play. But here's where Hill gets a bit nuanced. He also believed in certain universal laws and forces that influence our lives. And this is where the determinism angle comes in. While Hill believed in free will and personal responsibility, he also acknowledged that success wasn't entirely about just deciding to win. For instance, Hill often referred to the concept of infinite intelligence, a higher universal force that he believed was responsible for guiding those who were on the path of success. This force, according to Hill, connects us all and helps shape the opportunities and circumstances we encounter. While Hill doesn't say that this force controls us, he does suggest that it plays a significant role in shaping the events of our lives. He also talks about the Mastermind group, the idea that the combined energies and efforts of a group of like-minded people can create a kind of collective intelligence and opportunity. This implies that external forces, in the form of people, networks, and environments, have a powerful influence on our success. So, while we have the power to make decisions, Hill also acknowledges that success isn't simply a matter of individual willpower. It's about aligning yourself with the right forces and seizing opportunities when they arise. The balance. Free will in the context of universal laws. Hill didn't see free will and universal laws as opposing forces. Instead, he viewed them as complementary. He believed that we can exercise free will by choosing our thoughts, actions, and mindset, but our results are still shaped by the laws of the universe. These laws, such as the law of attraction, the power of belief, and the law of cosmic habit force, guide us towards success when we align our actions with them. For example, Hill believed that faith and desire act as a powerful magnet, attracting the people, resources, and opportunities you need. Your free will to choose a goal, combined with the universal forces that respond to your inner vibration, creates a kind of synergy that propels you forward. In this sense, Hill's view is not strictly deterministic. He didn't believe that our success was entirely out of our control, nor did he think we were at the mercy of fate. Instead, he believed in a partnership between free will and universal laws. Our choices matter, but we also need to be aligned with the forces that help shape our reality. So, did Napoleon Hill believe in determinism or free will? The truth is, he believed in both, but with a powerful emphasis on free will. He encouraged people to make decisions, take action, and control their mindset, but he also acknowledged that the universe operates on certain laws and principles that must be respected. Ultimately, Hill's philosophy isn't about being at the mercy of some preordained fate. It's about recognizing that while we have the power of free will, we must also work in harmony with the greater forces around us to unlock our true potential. Your choices determine your future. But understanding and aligning with universal laws can accelerate your success. Criticisms and controversies. Napoleon Hill's work has undoubtedly impacted millions of people, but it hasn't been without its fair share of criticisms. Let's dive into some of the biggest controversies and concerns surrounding his teachings. Questionable credibility. One of the most significant criticisms is the credibility of Hill's claims. Hill's story about being commissioned by Andrew Carnegie to write a guide to success is central to his legacy. However, there's no concrete proof that this meeting ever took place. Carnegie's family and colleagues have denied any such arrangement. This lack of evidence has led some to question Hill's honesty and whether he fabricated parts of his narrative to boost the appeal of his ideas. Oversimplification of success. Another common criticism is that Hill's teachings oversimplify the process of achieving success. His philosophy often revolves around concepts like faith, desire, and the power of positive thinking. While these factors are important, critics argue that real-world success isn't just about thinking positively. Many variables, such as economic conditions and luck, come into play. Hill's message, while motivational, might ignore the larger complexities of life that influence one's success. Lack of ethical emphasis. Hill's teachings focus heavily on personal achievement, but many critics point out the lack of ethical focus. There's little mention of integrity, honesty, or how to treat others in the pursuit of success. This has led some to view his philosophy as overly self-centered, prioritizing wealth and success without sufficient reflection on the importance of moral behavior or contributing to society. Infinite intelligence and metaphysical concepts. Hill's concept of infinite intelligence, a higher universal force that guides us toward success, is another area of controversy. While this resonates with those who believe in metaphysical forces, skeptics argue that relying on such abstract concepts may feel more like wishful thinking than practical advice. Critics question whether spiritual beliefs should play such a central role in a philosophy meant to guide success. Lack of real-world examples. Hill's work often lacks concrete examples of how his principles actually led to success. While he mentions figures like Thomas Edison and Henry Ford, he doesn't always provide detailed stories of how these individuals applied his principles. This absence of real-world case studies makes his teachings feel more like general advice rather than evidence-backed strategies. Marketing success as actual success. Finally, some critics point out that Hill himself didn't always embody the success he preached. Despite his fame as a motivational figure, Hill faced financial struggles throughout his life. Some argue that his personal life, with its ups and downs, undermines his teachings, raising questions about whether he truly applied his own advice. Additionally, his personal brand and marketing of success have led to accusations of selling the idea of success rather than living it. Despite these criticisms, Hill's work has undeniably inspired countless people. His principles have helped many take action and achieve their goals. However, as with any philosophy, it's important to approach Hill's teachings with a critical eye. While they offer powerful motivation, it's essential to recognize the complexity of success and adapt Hill's ideas to fit our own individual journeys. The impact of Hill on modern self-help. Napoleon Hill's influence on the self-help industry is undeniable. His book Think and Grow Rich has inspired millions and continues to be a foundational text in personal development. But Hill's impact goes beyond just one book. His principles have shaped modern success philosophies, business strategies, and motivational speaking. Pioneering self-help. Before Hill, personal development was more abstract and less accessible. Hill's combination of mindset and achievement created a blueprint that people could follow. His ideas on desire, faith, auto-suggestion, and the Mastermind group have influenced nearly every self-help book since. His work paved the way for today's personal development industry, giving people a practical path to success. Motivational speakers and coaches. Hill's impact on motivational speaking is profound. Figures like Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, and Zig Ziglar have all cited Hill as a major influence. These speakers expanded on Hill's principles, blending modern psychology and neuroscience. But the core ideas, the power of the mind and belief, remain the same. Hill's teachings continue to serve as the foundation for many successful speakers today. The law of attraction. Hill's ideas also contributed to the rise of the law of attraction. While he didn't coin the term, his emphasis on the power of thought and visualization has been central to the concept that our thoughts can shape our reality. Modern figures like Rhonda Byrne, author of The Secret, have expanded Hill's ideas, creating a movement where belief and positive thinking are seen as key to manifesting success. Making personal development mainstream. Hill's work made self-help accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy or educated. Think and Grow Rich became one of the best-selling books of all time, opening the door to personal development for the masses. Today, the self-help industry is a global phenomenon, with millions of people following Hill's principles to work toward their goals. Influence on entrepreneurs. Hill's philosophy has also influenced entrepreneurs and business coaches. His ideas on specialized knowledge planning and decision-making are now pillars of modern business strategies. Entrepreneurs like Grant Cardone and Gary Vaynerchuk often reference Hill when discussing the importance of mindset and belief in achieving success. The concept of the Mastermind group, in particular, has become central to today's emphasis on networking and collaborative growth, making Hill's teachings vital for modern entrepreneurs. Modern self-help content. Hill's principles are also deeply embedded in online courses, seminars, and corporate training. His emphasis on mindset mastery and goal setting has expanded into the digital age, where self-help content is now everywhere. You can find Hill's ideas in countless podcasts, YouTube channels, and blogs, proving his concepts continue to be relevant in today's fast-paced world. Napoleon Hill's influence on the self-help industry is far-reaching and long-lasting. His practical approach to success, focus on the mind, and belief in the power of action have inspired generations. Despite the criticisms, Hill's ideas remain a foundation for anyone looking to unlock their potential and achieve their goals. Next, we'll dive into how Hill's teachings connect with modern neuroscience and whether they still stand up in today's scientific world. Stay tuned. How Hill's ideas connect with today's neuroscience. Napoleon Hill's ideas, especially those found in Think and Grow Rich, have endured for decades, resonating with millions around the world. But are Hill's teachings just motivational rhetoric, or do they actually have a foundation in science? In recent years, researchers in neuroscience and psychology have begun to explore concepts that align remarkably well with Hill's principles. Let's dive into how Hill's teachings connect with what we now know about the brain and its role in shaping success. The power of thought. At the heart of Hill's philosophy is the power of thought. He believed that thoughts are things, and that your thoughts shape your reality. Hill's assertion that you can change your life by controlling your thoughts and desires has striking similarities to what modern neuroscience tells us about the brain's ability to reshape itself through neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connections in response to experiences, learning, and thoughts. Essentially, the brain can be rewired through repeated focus and attention, which is exactly what Hill was advocating when he talked about the importance of visualization and affirmations. Research has shown that when you regularly focus on positive thoughts and goals, the brain strengthens the neural pathways related to those ideas. Hill's concept of auto-suggestion, feeding your mind with positive affirmations and beliefs, aligns with this principle. By repeating positive thoughts, you can reinforce the neural pathways that support confidence, achievement, and success. Belief and the placebo effect. One of Hill's most powerful principles is the role of belief in success. He argued that if you believe in your ability to achieve your goals, you are more likely to do so. This idea has found support in modern neuroscience, particularly through the placebo effect. The placebo effect occurs when people experience real improvements in their health after taking a treatment that has no therapeutic value, simply because they believe it will work. This psychological phenomenon shows that belief can trigger real changes in the body. In the context of Hill's philosophy, belief isn't just a nice to have, it's an essential component for creating success because belief can actually influence your ability to achieve your goals. Furthermore, the power of visualization that Hill advocated is now understood to be a form of mental rehearsal. Studies in neuroscience show that visualizing success activates similar neural pathways in the brain as actually performing the task. So, when Hill emphasized visualizing your success as if it has already happened, he was essentially tapping into a scientifically supported technique for priming the brain for success. The subconscious mind and habit formation. Hill placed significant emphasis on the subconscious mind and its role in shaping success. According to Hill, the subconscious mind is a powerful force that shapes our actions, and it can be reprogrammed through positive thought and repetition. This ties directly into what we now understand about habit formation and the role of the subconscious in influencing behavior. Recent research on the brain's basal ganglia shows that this area is heavily involved in habit formation. Over time, the brain shifts learned behaviors into automatic responses, which is why people tend to act on habits without conscious effort. Hill's idea of auto-suggestion, feeding your subconscious positive thoughts and beliefs, actually mirrors how the brain rewires itself when we repetitively engage in certain behaviors or thoughts. Essentially, Hill's ideas encourage creating positive habits that push individuals toward success and modern neuroscience has shown us that the brain can indeed form these habits, leading to lasting changes in behavior. Focus and the reticular activating system, RIAST. One of the key elements in Hill's philosophy is the idea that you need to focus your thoughts and attention on your goals. He emphasizes that desire must be persistent and unwavering to truly succeed. This connects to the concept of the reticular activating system, RIAST, a network of neurons in the brain that filters the vast amount of information we are exposed to every day. The RAS helps us pay attention to what's important. When you focus on a specific goal or desire, the RAS becomes attuned to noticing opportunities, resources, and situations that align with your goal. This is why people often experience what Hill described as luck. When they focus on their desires, they seem to encounter situations and people that help them on their journey. It's not luck in the traditional sense, but rather a result of the brain filtering information in a way that aligns with your objectives. Hill's idea that you become what you think about most is tied to this mechanism. The more you focus on your goals, the more your brain actively works to bring those goals to your attention. The Mastermind group and collective brain power. Hill was also one of the first to popularize the idea of the Mastermind group, a collection of like-minded individuals who collaborate to achieve success. In modern terms, this could be seen as a collective intelligence or social brain. Neuroscience has demonstrated that the brain thrives on social interaction, and collaboration can lead to better problem solving and creativity. When people work together, they not only share ideas but also experience the cognitive benefits of pooling their brainpower. Hill understood this before neuroscience fully explained it. Group brainstorming and collaboration actually stimulate areas of the brain associated with creativity and problem solving, making the Mastermind group an effective strategy for success. Hill's teachings may have been ahead of their time, but modern neuroscience supports much of what he proposed, from the power of positive thinking to the subconscious mind and the importance of belief. Hill's principles have a scientific basis that can help individuals achieve their goals. His emphasis on visualization, affirmation, and habit formation aligns with what we now know about neuroplasticity and how the brain rewires itself through repetitive thought and behavior. Hill's ideas are not just motivational fluff. They are grounded in science, and understanding the brain's role in success can make his teachings even more powerful. Final Reflections: is Hill's philosophy timeless? So, after everything, do Napoleon Hill's ideas still hold up today? The short answer: yes, and here's why. At the core of Hill's philosophy is the belief that your mind creates your reality. That success isn't about luck or external conditions. It's about how you think, what you believe, and the action you take. That idea still hits hard, especially now, in a world where distractions are everywhere and self-doubt is loud. Science has only strengthened his case. Modern neuroscience shows us how thoughts rewire the brain, neuroplasticity, how belief affects outcomes, placebo effect, and how repetition forms habits. These are things Hill spoke about decades ago, just in a different language. His steps, desire, faith, auto, suggestion, planning, persistence. They're not outdated. They're just timeless human principles. And that's why they've stuck around. Even the idea of the Mastermind group, which might have sounded abstract back then, fits right in today. Whether it's a startup team, a community, or an online creator circle, Hill knew that people become more powerful when they think and grow together. Sure, there are critiques. Some call Hill's ideas too optimistic, too idealistic. Some doubt parts of his personal story. Fair. But what matters is the impact. And the truth is, his work helped shape modern self-help. It's influenced entrepreneurs, leaders, and thinkers across generations. Hill didn't give a shortcut. He gave a mindset. One built around clarity, discipline, belief, and relentless action. And if there's anything that hasn't aged, it's that recipe. So yes, Hill's philosophy is still relevant, still effective, still real, because no matter the era, the world always belongs to those who believe in an idea before the world sees it.